So I found the video of the Mr. Dapperly or whatever.
Oh, the Dapper Man?
Dapper Man.
You found him?
Yeah, so he had 2 or 3 videos over at Rams. One, it was like him and like 5 other dudes. And they were like total nerds.
He has a crazy beard, though. You seen that?
Yeah, it's a great beard.
Yeah.
They were all smoking the same cigar.
Yeah, I had mentioned there was at least one on there that I had seen where they're like all smoking one together and talking about it.
No, it was interesting because, at first light, a couple of them kind of were picking up something that the others weren't expecting, and so that was interesting. Then there's another one where, might have been like 3 of them, and I don't remember that one. They were doing like, reviewing, I think a couple different cigars, but and then he mentioned something in one of them that then got me looking kind of down the rabbit hole. But yeah, that's interesting.
Very nice.
So Riley will be out here shortly.
So,
Andrew put a pizza in for him.
thanks, sir. I have brought Apologetics.
Ooh, nice.
Very, very simple to read. Very, a lot of things in layman's terms, and a lot of nice like analogies and illustrations to kind of make things a little more easier to palate for our small little baby minds.
No. Is that someone you had read before, or?
Yes. William Lane Craig was kind of what got me into Apologetics.
Oh, okay.
Because I had, weird origin story to this. I had gone on the Wikipedia page for Mike Nelson, the guy from Mystery Science Theater. Because, there's the 2 robots and then the one guy.
Right.
And I had gone on like his Wikipedia for whatever reason. You're up late at night, you look up something on Wikipedia. 2 hours later, you've gone down the rabbit hole and you're looking at like tree species and stuff. And I was on his page, and I went to his like personal life and found out that he was like pretty staunch Republican kind of guy, and was super into Christian apologetics.
Huh.
Like C.S. Lewis and William Lane Craig, it said. So I clicked on William Lane Craig, like, I don't know who that is. Massive Wikipedia, look him up on YouTube, started finding a bunch of clips, and that was my introduction to apologetics. And I'm like, I am hooked. I didn't even know this was a thing.
Yeah.
I've been wanting something like that in my mind for so long without even realizing it.
Not even knowing what you wanted, really. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, and like, Dad, always was like, he liked the intellectual side of faith, but he never really encouraged us in any way to kind of look at that stuff. At least not me. I don't know about you.
No.
But yeah, once I started to like look at all these questions, like I didn't even know that Calvinism was a thing, so I had to grapple with that.
Right.
And like we talked about, like Genesis, Revelation, controversial stuff, and realizing that there's tons of different ideas and opinions, and it's not just what you kind of grow up with or around. And so that was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
That was probably back in like 2016, 17. I started doing that. So it's gonna just read. I don't know if I've read part of this. And this is kind of an abridged, simple version of like all the bullet points from his bigger book, Reasonable Faith, which is also the name of his nonprofit ministry. And that book's been revised like 3 times. It's like, pretty substantial thing. So
Yeah, almost like a college
it's
academia
been almost a textbook, yeah. So that one I have at home, but I have not dived into because I kind of want to tackle this first. We got the bullet rye in here.
Bullet rye, yeah.
Thank you very kindly.
My go-tos are bullet rye, partly for the price.
Tastes good for the price.
Buffalo Trace, again, just quality for the price. And then haven't made it back to Sam's, but their new aged bourbon.
Yeah, we had that last time, right?
It's decent, yeah.
That was good.
It's like $25.
Yeah, Wild Turkey and Bullet Wild Turkey and Buffalo Trace are like for like a $20-$25.
Yep.
Those you can't really go wrong with. I kind of wish that the Woodford Reserve was a bit cheaper.
Yeah.
I mean, it is good for what it is, but like at the price points, like I would probably pick Bullet 9 times out of 10 just because it's
like, do I like it that much more?
it's like $10 cheaper, but it doesn't taste $10 cheaper.
Yeah.
So I'd say Woodford. No, that Four Roses single barrel is probably the most expensive that I've liked so far. Aside from, I don't know how much that was it the coffee.
Yeah.
What's that one?
Nika coffee.
Nika.
Did we get the single malt or did we get the?
I don't think it was the malt because you had gotten a couple of those, right?
Right. There's the. I can't remember now. They have 2 different ones. I think the malt is a little bit more expensive, but based on some of the ratings, people tend to like the other one better.
Whatever the first one was, we tried.
Yeah, it was like a kind of a tannish, brownish label. It's like Nika, the Japanese whiskey. That's in the $70 range. It tends to be a little, I think that's for kind of a special occasion,
Yes.
a little bit of sipping whiskey. You're not just gonna like mix it with some Coke and.
But man, that single barrel and that Nika is that's what I want out of whiskey. It's just like really full-bodied, kind of almost has a thickness to it. Bourbon can stand on its own 2 feet.
Yeah.
And I'm just not a Scotch guy. I don't know why. A Monkey Shoulder I like somewhat because it's a malt, so it has a bit more of the funk.
Right.
But like the really watery, like the Johnny Walker and like the really smoky ones, I can't palate it.
I can't either. I've tried them a couple different times, different occasions, thinking maybe it was just the wrong venue, but yeah, it's just too much.
I agree. To refill my light. Maybe.
I was having a heck of a time getting our lighters to refill, and finally I realized you have to like really shake those.
Really?
Yeah, at least for mine. I don't know why. You just shake it really hard, and I don't know if that just increases the pressure, and then shake it again, and finally the lighters will fill up. And I just got mine on Amazon, just cheap YouTube. But
I've heard mixed things about that. I've heard some people say you don't need to shake it. I've heard some people say you really do, and because if they don't, nothing happens.
I mean,
I don't know who to trust.
the pressure inside shouldn't change. I mean, it should just be
It's just-
under pressure.
Yeah.
Yeah, but so I don't know why that would be a thing.
Here it comes.
Here it comes.
Did you guys get these off of the roof?
Yeah. Well, and they're about a foot deep over here. Well, I was up doing the Christmas lights, and I thought, while I'm up here, I'm just going to grab the leaf blower and blow them off the roof.
So what are you smoking?
So we got 2 new boxes. I'm going to read them off, and then I'm going to walk them over to the camera.
Oh, okay. Nice.
So these are 2 of 4 that I tried when I was in Florida the last trip. Walked into the little Cuban coffee shop, and they had a little nice humidor. And none of the cigars were priced, so I just grabbed a handful that looked good. Didn't actually recognize a whole lot that they had in there, which I thought was interesting. And So these are called Monte Cristo, but then there, of course, is like all the family names. Plasencia family, 100% Nicaraguan. This is the Espada Oscuro Monte Cristo.
Oh.
And the box is like a little crushed velvet going on or something.
Ooh.
Is that interesting? And that came wrapped in really thick, glossy black paper with the same design on it. So, walk this over the camera.
Let me make sure that it's on the scene. Let me focus it here. If you can see that. There we go. It's kind of dark, but yeah, it's nice.
And so yeah, I thought the packaging was nice. So that's the first one. That's the first one.
Now that you have the music going, I'm going to do a quick sound check. I'm sure it sounds okay. What's the next one?
Next one is Aging Room. I'm trying to remember.
Say something, Riley.
Yeah. Yep.
That's perfect.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is it?
Yeah. What do you need now? Name Gertrude?
So I'd never seen these before, which is why I grabbed one of them when I was in the shop. It's Aging Room by, I think it's Raphael Nadal or something. But the box is interesting. So these are, it says original Quattro.
Okay.
And then their logo looks like a brass knuckles.
Brass knuckles.
Yeah, so this also came with a hat
A hat.
that says Aging Room on it. And then on the back, there's a little brass knuckles logo. I'm guessing that's what it is. I don't know, unless there's some...
That's what it looks like. What is it? You stay there. I'll zoom in
Yeah.
since it's at the fire.
Definitely brass knuckles.
There you go. It's pretty cool.
It's cold.
I brought blankies.
Yeah. Oh, this is mainly my face is cold.
So, and the box itself is super cool. There's a little notch here. And there's grooves. So it slides open this way. And then,
There's like a stand.
yeah, I had it going in the house, but it kind of, there we go.
Oh.
So you can display it.
So it's almost like a flip top, but
Yeah. Just thought it was cool. And then there's a little info card, you know.
is that all of them, or are there some of the humidors?
So I Googled that. I'm like, you know, when you get a box, if it's sealed, do you put it in your humidor or do you not? And it's kind of mixed. It depends. Like some of these will actually come with their own little...
Little Bovita packets.
Yeah. And neither of these did. So I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and unpack them, put them in my humidor, you know, because they've been in the, you know, on the UPS truck, that sort of thing. So I just put a handful in here, left the rest in the humidor.
Okay. 'Cause I was gonna say, like, it's a bit of a power move to have a box like that and then have only like 5 cigars in it.
Right? Let's see. I think this was a 20 pack. This was a 10 pack.
Okay.
But you know, ratings they're in the 92 to 95 range. So
Nice.
these smoke a little quicker than these, and then I do have another Melania too. So you're welcome to start with whichever you want.
I mean, it's right here. I'll try this. Thank you very, very kindly.
Yes.
Aging Room Original Quattro. Got the torpedo tip.
Yeah, I haven't had a torpedo tip in a while.
It makes me feel like I'm circumcising something. When I cut these off.
just the tip.
Just the tip. You don't want to go past the shoulder, so. I feel like torpedo tips, I mean, they look kind of ugly to me, but theoretically they should cut and smoke a little easier, right?
Yeah, I've come to find that oftentimes I don't like just a full guillotine off the end of a thick cigar and then feels like you've just got a lot of raw tobacco
Yes.
in your mouth.
Yes.
Whereas the Torpedo, you can kind of maybe avoid some of that.
Yes.
Possibly.
You can also sort of restrict or open up the amount of smoke you have too,
Yes.
which is some nice flexibility. So you have not had this yet?
I had the one in Florida weeks ago.
Oh, that's smooth.
Can't even tell you what it's like. Long since forgot.
It's like I'm sucking air through a straw. It's perfect.
Which probably speaks to the quality of the cigar as well as maybe the Torpedo shit. You know? As far as
Oh
the-
man down. Sizzle, sizzle.
Something too with the Maduro wrapper. Like you get a little something on your lips and it's almost
It's like you ate a can of Pringles almost. Like
Yeah.
It's like a salt.
like a little salty, powdery something.
Yeah. You gonna smoke, Riley?
I think so.
Whatever's available.
Like a good mildew.
Good mildew. I think I'll smoke. I just don't remember how.
I think you'd like either. Again, it's been a while since I can't really. I mean, this is already starting off good.
I don't even think
This is like the smoothest cigar I've ever
Are you
smoked.
this one?
As far as like draw.
The draw.
Like perfect.
Yeah, mine is. There's no resistance at all. Stupid. Right.
Oh,
It's good.
this one looks like a. I don't know. I guess I'll do this one.
But it's really, the cigar is
I
like
get that cutter.
solid all around. There's no soft spots.
Yeah, for how smooth it draws, it shouldn't feel this tight. Feel.
Yeah.
Which I wonder, like, how much of that relies on skill with your hands versus like methodology, right? It's like, is it possible to roll them different ways? In some ways smoke cleaner than others? Or is it just like you have a really good sense for how tight you're rolling? You know what I mean?
And if you want like a standardization of operation model, though, where all the cigars have the same consistency, then you've obviously got more than one person rolling. And if you're producing a quantity. So then, how do you control for some of those variabilities and how they're after? It's just maybe over time you just get them to really sync up, and then those that are just not the right, you know, whatever, end up being the rejects. I don't know.
Yeah, I wonder how many like rollers different companies have. Like, how many rollers does, Arturo Fuentes have?
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to know.
12, 200.
Two. It's like how many do they sell? Which means how many do they need to make? Or how many can they make? Like what's their threshold of quality? Where it's like
No.
we basically have two 3-star Michelin chefs here, and we're not going to settle for anything less as far as cigars go.
I know some of the videos I've seen, it looks like they can be, again, this is not necessarily quality cigars I was looking, but it looks like you could roll a cigar in a minute.
Yeah.
Really.
45 seconds.
As long
a
as
minute.
you've got all the filler and the wrappers and everything ready to go.
Yep.
So, you could probably crank out. One person could do, I think, hundreds a day.
And if you get into the groove and you're, like I said, like really good with knowing how it should feel.
Yeah.
But it's just, consistency.
And then as far as putting a little label wrapper on them and then boxing them, and I'm sure that's a whole separate operation that's probably post quality control, but
Right.
yeah, maybe not as many people rolling as we think.
This is a anthem cigar.
Yeah, I might have to put more layers on it. It's chilly.
I was smart this time. I brought my hat and I brought my gloves.
Well, I have a long sleeve. Well, no, I have a short sleeve and a long sleeve over that, and then a flannel over that, and then this jacket. Oh my gosh. And it's just, I still am very cold.
What are you, a girl?
Yeah.
We need to wrap you in a blanket.
Maybe.
One of my favorite Babylon Bee articles just said, "Breaking news: wife cold."
Wife cold. It's like, no, that's impossible. Those such things happen.
Are they just like not because they're not as muscular? Is that why, or does their like body run a little cooler?
Yeah, I think their thermoregulation tends to be a little different than that of a man's. You know, they've got a little extra layer of fat under the skin, which, you know, is a type of insulation. A lot of women also have undiagnosed or subclinical low thyroid. And low thyroid makes you cold, you tend to retain more weight.
Why is that?
There's different theories. The main micronutrient that's required for your thyroid gland to produce thyroid hormone is iodine. Well, we had so if your thyroid's not working well, or it's not getting what it needs, it'll grow and get bigger. That's called a goiter. Kind of like you see little kids on TV in Africa that have a belly. It distends to try to increase the surface area so that if there's any nutrients, it can get it. So this was probably like, I don't know, 50s or 60s, we had this thyroid goiter epidemic across the U.S. Not so much in the coastal areas, but definitely Midwest, including Colorado. And so what they discovered was that we were not getting enough iodine.
And that's the salt thing.
Yeah, so then they started to iodize salt. So if you just buy cheap Morton salt in the grocery store, it'll say iodized salt. That's why they did that. It wasn't for flavor or anything else. And it's the micronutrient, so you don't need a ton of iodine. But if you're deficient and you've been deficient for a long time, then you usually need to take a lot of it for a while. But so yeah, long-term iodine deficiency will cause low thyroid, which will then cause depression, weight gain, feel cold all the time, low energy. Your skin will get dry, your hair kind of gets dry and brittle, and that's all the symptoms. Muscle aches and pains, joint aches and pains, super, super common. And if you were to poll 10 women, 7 out of 10, I have all those symptoms.
Really?
Yeah. But the problem with thyroid is it'll be on usually the low end of normal on labs. And so your doctor will be like, oh, no, you're normal. But it's a low end of normal. So you'll have low thyroid symptoms for 15 years before finally it hits below that low threshold to where it triggers, you're hypothyroid now. So a lot of doctors now, they'll still do lab work and blood work, but they'll start treating thyroid based on symptoms and not just wait for the blood work to show up. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that's a really long way to say that women tend to be more cold than men. And I don't know why women suffer more with the low thyroid than men do, but I mean, if you're walking down the street, I'd say 50% of women that you walk past have undiagnosed thyroid issues, which just a little bit of iodine daily for a while would cure that. Man, I forgot how good that was.
That's so good.
I saved the wrapper, brought it back. I'm like, because then you kind of forget. It's like, do I chance it and buy a whole box? That's the only way to get them right now, is buy the box. I'm like, all right.
I'll say I've had better tasting cigars, but this doesn't taste bad.
No.
It's just not extremely interesting, but man, like for how smooth it smokes, I can't complain. There's a YouTube channel that we've been watching for a few years. I don't remember how. I think I came across him in like my recommended videos or something, but his name is Adam Ragusia, and he does cooking videos. I think he lives in Georgia, and he started like with like journalism, like local journalism. Like he would go like interview people and stuff like that. He's just always been really into food, so he started doing like food videos. And he kind of alternates between doing like a recipe, like earlier in the week, and then later in the week he'll do like a food science video. So like the history of like fridges and like how it's impacted society and stuff. I think he kind of strikes me as like a left of center kind of guy. So a lot of his stuff, he pushes up against the system a little bit, but he very often leans on studies, and he has a different opinion on MSG than you do.
Gotcha.
You know, one of those kinds of people.
Yeah.
But it seems like from the position he comes from, he at least tries to approach things very fairly. But he's done a lot of interesting videos. He did one on iodine, on the salt thing, and I that was maybe 2 years ago, so I don't. All that you just said was like, oh yeah.
Sounds familiar.
That sounds familiar. I saw that somewhere. But what I love about his stuff is that he brings the science of food into the recipe stuff. Mm-hmm. So like he'll explain like, oh, I'm going to put a little bit of water in here in the pan for this part because it's going to help with this scientific thing that would happen with the food, and we don't want to have it do that.
Gotcha.
So it's basically like smart home cooking, and he like exploded. Like he has a couple videos on like how to make like a wood-fired pizza in your own home oven, like conventional oven.
Yeah.
That has like 5, maybe up to 10 million views at this point.
Wow.
So like he just exploded because his videos were like so quality.
Yeah.
But I'll share them to you on Messenger, and like maybe find one of his more controversial videos, and see what you think about it. I mean, I doubt you'll agree on all of the, because like I said, from where he's coming from, he sees things a bit differently. But I really appreciate someone bringing like intelligence into like cooking, rather than just like follow a recipe, because it's important to know why the recipe functions the way it does.
Right.
And like, if you like to be able to have a little bit of like jazz improv to it, where it's like, oh, I'm gonna make this dish, but I'm gonna add a bit of this because I know it will do this to the dish. And, yeah, he's a entertaining channel to watch.
I ate some pizza if you want any.
Pizza?
Yeah.
I'm okay.
It's my dinner.
Love it.
Oh wow. It's steamy. The Qdoba I had 6 hours ago is not holding up anymore.
No.
That meeting I went to for today cost around $5,000 to do.
Cost the company that much?
Because they're all paying us. They ordered the food and then like a bunch of other stuff as well. But yeah, it was a very important meeting for them.
And it was a training or
A leadership meeting.
leadership meeting. Are you in the leadership?
Well, I'm going to be a trainer, so everybody that's becoming a trainer, all the team leaders and managers and the owners, like they're all there.
Sorry.
And they're just going over how to do better at the store.
Joe's there?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. How's he doing?
He's doing better. His cancer's not gone, but it's not, I don't know, it's not doing worse.
Is that the manager of the restaurant?
He's the owner.
The owner?
Yeah. But he's doing all right. But, like, he looks fine. Like, he doesn't look like a guy who has cancer, but yeah.
I didn't know he had cancer.
Yeah, he accidentally found it 3 years ago, the tumor as well. But he's been doing a lot of treatment for it. So right now it's kind of at a weird spot where it's not doing anything worse, but it's not getting better, I guess. So
Is it optimistic or kind of grim?
I'm saying more optimistic.
That's good.
So yeah, it's good. But just a kind of home meeting about how we can do better, you know.
How you can summon with chicken?
Oh yeah, some more chicken.
Just like every time you guys have a meeting, you just need to be like, spicy nuggets, spicy strips. Like, when's it gonna happen?
I did see the spicy strips.
You saw the spicy strips?
Yeah, they were talking about a new format for cooking. It's like a different, like, not it's just a different computer thing that they use for it. And I saw spicy strips on there, so I'm like,
Oh,
when is that coming? I don't know about spicy nuggets. I don't even know if that's an idea. But
it's some like so long as I don't have to like buy a fillet, which feels awkward. Like I just want spicy.
yeah, I think the strips are
What I
kind of.
want.
I mean, tomorrow we'll get the peppermint shake and the tortilla soup, chicken tortilla soup. So that's coming back.
Cool. How often do you guys get a truck? Like every day? A couple days?
Well, sorry. You mean a bus or the truck? Because the truck is like what we get shipments and stuff.
Supply truck, yeah.
Oh yeah. I don't know. It's maybe every day, but lately we've not been having it because of supply issues. So we've not had lettuce and other things and stuff. Like one day we almost ran out of sugar, like for making tea and stuff. But I'd say probably every day or every other day. So I don't know. There's a couple managers that I could ask about the truck. I mean, they always need my help, so I mean, ask them if they want my help or whatever. But I think that's pretty early in the morning, like when they're opening. But I'm not sure.
Going back to the cancer thing, I only just recently found out what carcinogens were. And how basically everyone has the opportunity for cancer. It's just, what's the thing that's going to make it happen if you let it? What do you think are the big factors in cancer? Like, what's the most common cancer, and what do you think causes it? Diet?
So I definitely think there's some people there can be a genetic predisposition
Okay.
for certain cancers. So like women, breast cancer. And that's if they have the BRCA1 gene. Their risk is substantially higher than women that don't have that gene. To the point that people like Brad Pitt's ex,
Angelina Jolie?
yeah, she had a double mastectomy
Oh.
prophylactically because she had the BRCA gene.
Oh.
And she come under some criticism for that.
What is she doing?
Pepper, what you barking at?
Woof woof.
So with a mastectomy, they don't get all the breast tissue. So you still have the chance of developing breast cancer even with a mastectomy. I mean, I think your odds are definitely less, but it's not zero. Pretty good research on sulforaphane, which is a compound in broccoli, which kind of gives it
Pepper.
a slightly sulfury. What do I should forget? So anyway, sulforaphane from broccoli kills breast cancer cells. It's like toxic to it.
Okay.
And so, if I was a woman with the pepper, I'm gonna go deal with that. Yeah. If I was a female with the BRCA1 gene and maybe some family history of breast cancer as well, I would do a substantial concentrated dose of broccoli extract or sulforaphane, just prophylactically. The other thing is, women are inundated by estrogens more now than ever. So they hit menarche, which is when they start to menstruate way earlier. And there's girls like 7 and 8 years old now, where it used to be like mid to late teens. Like there were girls in high school that still weren't menstruating when I was a kid.
Is that happening more around like the metro areas? Concentrated societies?
Yep. So downstream from Denver, I think we've talked about this, they were finding that fish were becoming feminized. And a lot of it is women are taking birth control, pills in particular, and then, you do your normal urination, flush the toilet. Those hormones still stick around in the water supply. They don't just magically go away.
Turn the frogs gay.
Turn the frogs gay. So there's that, plus a lot of plastics act as estrogen in the body. Kind of a, environmental estrogens, if you will. And other things, there's other other things in the environment that can kind of act as a exogenous estrogen. So women are just hit with a lot of estrogen, and a lot of women tend to have issues producing enough progesterone, which kind of helps offset estrogen. And it seems like women are producing the more overactive form of estrogen. There's like 10 or 12 different types of estrogen. And most doctors, if they are to test for any, usually just test for one. If they're really good, they might test for the top 3. So if a woman's mass producing the super overactive version, that's going to stimulate those breast cells. And basically cancer is just overstimulation and overproliferation that's unchecked by the immune system.
That's kind of I mean, I'm no scientist or doctor, but that's kind of the vibe I got from it after learning about what carcinogens were. And, you know,
it's like sunburns. You keep burning the skin.
Yes.
It's going to create a ton of DNA damage, and your body's really good at saying, "Oh, that cell looks like a freak of nature. We need to get rid of it." So then your sunburn turns into a peel. So all those skin cells are dead.
right.
But if you do that over and over and over, eventually you're going to have a few cells that are just like, they just go rogue, and the body can't catch it. There's also a gene called the P53 gene, which creates the P53 enzyme, and that is responsible for programmed cell death or cell suicide. And in a lot of cancer patients, their P53 gene isn't working quite right. So their cells aren't told to commit suicide when they're supposed to. So then you've got uncontrolled cell proliferation.
Oh.
Yeah. And
Right.
so that's a genetic issue.
Okay.
And with cancer, there's some cancers we don't know why they show up. There's others, like if you work in a uranium mine, there's a really good chance you're going to have pancreatic cancer. It just tends to kind of hit that particular organ. And then, of course, like you said, diet's going to affect your risk of colon cancer.
Don't put your balls in the microwave.
Right.
You might be okay, but testicular cancer.
Smoking, not cigars per se, but if you're a heavy cigarette smoker,
Hey, FDA says it's okay.
that's right.
I have the link.
That obviously increases the risk for lung cancer.
Dog is dead.
Yep.
It's had enough.
I took care of her. I don't know what was wrong. She'll be out there.
Maybe the leaves were freaking her out, and Gussie Kitty's over here creeping around in the leaves.
It's just too spooky.
She just sees a leaf move and then she just blows up.
By the way, I forgot about your story because I keep forgetting it's in my bag. But I will read it. I promise.
Oh, it's okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Mom and Dad finished my book.
Nice.
What they think of it?
We talked about it briefly. They had brought something to the house, so I was like talking to them at the car in front of the house. So I was, kind of not in a rush, but it was very quick. But because they had been slowly working on it, Mom was reading it out loud so Dad could.
Yeah.
And I had forgotten that they were reading from one of my manuscripts. I think it was like before my typo fixes.
Gotcha.
And because she was like, "There's a lot of typos," and I'm like, I think I fixed that. I think you have an old one. But they commented that they really liked the ending.
That's cool.
They thought it was very profound. And it wasn't just like oh, good job, one of our kids, you did something, I'm proud of you. It was like a genuine, they felt what I had made. And
That's cool.
I think it kind of took them aback a little bit to because bless our siblings, it's not like they just kind of live their lives, and they're not necessarily like people who want to achieve great things. Not like I do either, but like I wanted to make something that existed outside of myself.
Yeah.
And I think this was the first time. I think this book is the first thing I've made that's like genuinely, I think, really good. Mm-hmm. That isn't just like, oh, I'm an amateur. It's like I think I did a good job on it. And I could tell by the way that they reacted to it that like it actually like struck a chord with them. And I'm like, great,
Yeah.
it's good. And for it being like, it's like not not completely, but it has like steampunk elements and some fantasy elements. So it's not their type of book at all.
Right. It's not like Mom reads that stuff all
No,
the time.
but I mean, it was just a framework for me to tell like a very human story, and I think that part resonated with them. So, like, you know what? My parents were, ancient. If they say it's good,
Well, I would say they're more open now than in years past to just new ideas, a documentary, maybe a book.
yep.
It seems like if you or I are interested and talk about it, it sparks their interest as well, which, I appreciate that. Not all going to agree on the rapture and those things. But
No,
that's
but
okay.
I think it's never really come up in their lives where they've had people who you find it.
No! Unmarked black helicopters.
I'm okay.
They found out about our cigar nights.
They're talking about cancer. They figured it out.
This is good too.
What was I just saying? Completely derailed me.
Mom and Dad.
I think they've gone, sadly, like most of their lives without coming up against people who were, I wouldn't say like seekers, but just general truth seekers who
Yeah.
like to question everything.
Yeah.
And so we're like that. And I think that's attractive to other people. I think people like that.
Yeah. It's kind of the difference between, a cynic and a skeptic, or just like a sincere seeker.
Yes.
Like, I'm really trying to seek truth. I'm okay with experiencing some cognitive dissonance if it maybe gets me to a truth that is maybe a little uncomfortable on the way there. But at the same time, I know people that change their theology like at the turn of the hat. It's just like they're always on to the next weird theological thing.
And they take it, I don't know what the phrase would be, but they take it hook, line, and sinker every single time, and they're just easily swayed.
Yeah.
And I'm not like that.
Yeah, agreed. And then the other extreme of that is someone that's just so staunch that they just cannot hear an opposing view because it just creates so much discomfort with them that they just shut
Which
down.
that's a separate problem in and of
It's a
itself.
separate problem.
That's something a little more farther back down the line.
Agreed.
Yeah, it's just like we were talking about. Once I got into apologetics and the, it's a pre-existing term, but William Lane Craig talks about it, is systematic theology. So you're making a system of theology that functions like a machine.
Interesting.
And like he said before in like Q&As and stuff about how like your faith isn't necessarily determined by one thing. It's like maybe it's 10% of like the moral argument, or 20% of the fine-tuning argument, or 20% like the resurrection of Jesus, but like it's enough to get you into the majority of thinking, because it's a cumulative case.
Young Earth creationism really resonates with me, and so a lot of it's kind of data-driven, but then there's still, maybe a faith component over here, or you had a particular,
Yes.
supernatural experience.
Yes.
Right? And I think not everyone's going to be the same then.
Right.
Yeah.
There's a lot of, there's personal experience that influences every type of belief.
Right.
But there's also like things you do know, things you don't know, things that seem compelling, things that don't seem compelling. And so you really have to like, as uncomfortable as it is, as like you said, to kind of remove yourself from the equation and be like, but also like still have that part of you that's like, that seems really overwhelming to me. Like I can't ignore that.
Right.
I need to, that's going to stick.
Yep.
But I think most people default to like everything I believe, or they think that they try to figure out what they believe and then they let it rest, and it collects dust.
So where do you land in that spectrum?
Of what?
Just you and your faith and your belief system and
I try to like 50-50 it. Because like 50% me retaining and not just being, because when you said skeptic, like whenever someone calls themselves a skeptic, I feel like it's kind of like a detriment, right? Because you're saying that's almost saying you're more of a skeptic than anyone else.
Right, because we're all skeptical.
To a certain degree.
Yeah.
But when you label yourself that way, it makes it sound like anything you come across, you're going to filter it completely through data before letting it, resonate with you at all.
Right.
And I'm kind of hesitant to that.
It has a little bit of a negative
A little bit.
feel to it, yeah.
A little bit. So I'd say 50% of like retaining my own personal judgment, but letting that other 50% kind of mold me as time goes on. Cumulative data. I like to use an analogy of like pillars holding something up. If this pillar is like super weak, is that going to like tip other pillars and you're going to lean on each other? And it's like how does your foundation look? You want to have your foundation kind of level.
Yeah.
So that's how I feel.
Faith can't just be based on your feelings.
Yes.
Feelings and emotion can be tricky.
There's a lot of
be deceiving.
There's a lot of stuff I'm convinced of. There's a lot of stuff I think is probably true. There's a lot of stuff that I don't know, and I just have kind of an opinion.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of stuff that I haven't learned yet.
Yeah.
And I can recognize all of those things. And I don't think a lot of people separate their belief into those categories of like, how certain are you on something? And how does that impact the other things you're certain?
Right.
It's not just theology, it's all of life, all of your
yeah.
beliefs. Politics too.
Yeah, I mean, just growing through my philosophy of economics has evolved over time. I mean, at one point,
That's a very complicated thing to figure out.
It's very complicated, and again, personality-wise, like some people are a bleeding heart, and they would love for the federal government to just give everyone all the things and coddle everyone, and no one ever has to feel pain and discomfort ever again.
And you completely understand that position.
Yeah, and there's dystopian books written about it. And then there's others that are just like hardcore, rugged individualism, pull yourself up by the bootstraps, no safety nets at all.
Right.
In a civilized society, and that's obviously the other extreme. And so I worked through all of that. I tend to be a little bit more, I don't know if you say utilitarian. Just, I tend to not want to give someone a $5 bill on the street corner. That doesn't feel like I've actually accomplished much, if they're panhandling.
It's about character change.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because giving them money doesn't guarantee a character change.
Right.
And sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you.
And no, and some people criticize that as like the corner confessional. You give them $5, now you feel better about yourself.
Yes.
It's like that's kind of a harsh criticism, but there may be some truth there. I would rather go work alongside 20 other people and build a homeless shelter. Like I feel like you're solving a problem.
There was
With my own, blood, sweat, and tears, not with someone else's money.
Right.
Let's go do this.
Right.
And we've tried to act that out when we go to our trips to Mexico, where we build homes for folks that need a home. But even then, they still have to save up the money for the lot. They buy the lot, and then we go down there. We raise the money in church. We do chili cook-offs and stuff. That's burritos to build a home. It's burritos.
Yes.
And then we go down and with, the sweat of our brow, we build 2 homes in 2 days. And I can get behind something like that, but just to give someone that's panhandling $5 and think that I've changed their life. But that's where I'm a little bit more utilitarian. I kind of like to see things done more structural. But at the same time, I still want to be open to the Holy Spirit's nudging that, you know what? You don't know all the facts here, but I want you in faith to do this thing. Maybe that's where I hand someone a $20
There might be a moment where, this is the thing I was going to get into in a second, there might be a moment where giving someone $10 is a waste of that $10 and it further negatively impacts their life. There might be a moment where that person genuinely needed that $10 and it just hits them in a very profound way.
Yep.
And so the Holy Spirit thing, I think, is a very apt thing to bring up there.
And I think that's where you need to let the Spirit lead you. Because again, I think there's going to be situations where you'll do that and it makes no sense.
Yes.
But it felt Spirit-led, and it wasn't just because you felt bad because they were on the corner and they had a dog with them. Oh, the poor puppy. I'm going to give him
Because it's almost something that goes against your default.
Yeah.
So it's not like, oh, I just feel like being good this time. It's like, no, it's like there was a glitch in the matrix, and you're like, I feel like I got to do this.
Yeah. And it might be that he's still going to take it and go, buy a fifth of whiskey. And he's going to do that anyway. But it's more about you surrendering to the Spirit's nudging.
And there might be a good that comes from it that you won't see.
All out of your control.
I had posted a tweet once. I don't remember how I worded it. I think it was in response to someone else. Something along the lines of, and I don't know the statistics on this, but I'm pretty sure that it's the case that, like, there are many homeless people who it's not like they are in actual dire straits and are like, oh no, I just ran out of money and I lost things. I need money to get the basic necessities back.
Right.
That happens sometimes, and you'll see people who even be like, I need $5 for gas.
Yeah.
But a lot of the time, it's either a chosen lifestyle or a lifestyle because of like mental impairments.
Yeah.
And so you have to consider that when it's like, are you just always going to give money to the panhandler? Like, you need to kind of blindly, and like you said, like bleeding hearts have trouble with this, blindly look at the data and be like, is this probabilistically going to actually be a positive?
Yeah.
Which, that's hard, but you don't know.
Right.
So, would you rather be like safe than sorry? And that's not me telling anybody like stop giving money to homeless people. It's just like, that's something you have to consider. If you've considered it, great. If you haven't, you probably should.
And you're talking about your theology and your belief systems and how that, it's kind of the same when it comes to economics and how you interact with those around you, your community. I think a lot of, again, there's going to be your defaults based on your personalities. You got bleeding hearts and you got, the other side of that. But then, and I've seen people they play the game of like, oh, well, I'm going to offer them a job. Come rake my leaves this afternoon. They don't want to come rake your leaves. Like that's, they've got a sign that says we'll work for food. And so then they're like, oh, it's a gotcha moment. See, they didn't want to work. They just want to pay me. It's like, yeah, good for you. You got them. It's like, I don't know. I don't think that's very cool either.
I mean, these days, like, all I ask for is like a crumb of nuance from anybody. A crumb. Just a tiny bit.
Because everything is freaking nuanced.
It is.
No one wants to like accept that.
And you can't live in that binary way of yeses and nos, because sometimes there's maybes.
I get people ask questions about political things, and it's like, do you want the complicated or the really complicated answer? Because it's not a yes or no answer.
Yeah. Especially there's so many questions that seem like loaded too.
Yes.
Where it's like, it's like, are you anti-choice for women? It's like, okay, where do I start on that one?
So let's go back to our premises.
we need to start at a place where we know that we're both in the same spot.
Yeah. And words matter. Mm-hmm. And definitions of words matter.
I've learned to be very careful with what I say.
Yeah.
And even still, people will be like, you said this. I'm like, nope, go back, look. I said, like, should do, or maybe, it's like, still doesn't matter. I'm really tired of, I don't know how often this happens to you, but just kind of being caricatured.
Yep.
And it's like, were you talking to me, or were you talking to what you think I believe?
Right. Like, you've never asked me out for coffee. We're going to sit down and have a conversation. Or you're going to instantly go to, I'm going to make all these assumptions about what you said, and I'm going to, that can be really frustrating.
Which is why I've come to the point, and I'm not going to go into this on the video because it's personal family stuff that we talked about before, but people who disagree with me on something, I haven't had the chance to do this yet, but whenever I'm talking to someone who strongly disagrees with me on something, and this is like a basic like how to win friends and influence people kind of premise, is just like ask them questions. You know, be like, okay, so like, what do you think about this, and this, so that I know what, like, where you stand, and so I'm not caricaturizing you into some box that you don't exist in.
When you say X, like, how would you define that?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
So that we know what we're both talking about. That's super important.
Otherwise, you can talk past each other and just get offended.
Yeah, it happens all the time.
All the time.
Right, Riley? Yeah.
And things get conflated. Man, it's irritating.
Yes. It's like, oh, you think this, so therefore you also think this.
Like, no.
This has been a great cigar.
So one thing I haven't done is I need to go back and create a file on my phone, a notes file, of the boxes of cigars I've purchased and what the average like retail price per cigar.
Did I ask what these were? How much these were?
You did not, and I couldn't tell you.
Oh, okay.
I won't, unless I know for a fact it's going to be an amazing cigar. Like when I buy them in bulk, they're usually around the $10 price.
It's stunning to me.
Yeah. So these are 10 to 12. Neither of those are at Rams, I checked. But if they were, they're probably a $15 cigar easily. Have you seen the ones at Rams that are like wrapped in, looks like parchment paper? They're like top shelf on that middle rack. They're on the, if you go in, they're on the opposite side.
I think so.
Look like they're wrapped up in like a...
It's like a little like a pharaoh tomb for a cigar.
It looks like a mummy cigar.
Yeah.
And I don't know what to do with those.
Like, it's a little scary.
And I'm, probably my pride, but it's like, and I love Rams, haven't had the greatest success with like asking questions.
Sure.
So it's like I'm kind of embarrassed to be like, what's going on with this thing and how do I smoke that? But they look really interesting.
Yeah.
And they tend to, when you go to a grocery store and there's like stuff that's like hasn't been touched in 15 years and there's dust on the top, and then the other is like always almost cleared out.
Yes.
You kind of know what like people like to eat or whatever. Same thing at Rams. It's like if I see like 4 or 5 boxes spread out from the same company and like they're all full and haven't been touched, and you see something else and like all picked over, it kind of gives you a feel of what people are like. Which again, I don't know that I like what everyone else likes, but those seem to be kind of untouched. So I don't know if they're just, and I can't even remember the price on it, but it's like, if it's a $20 cigar and it looks like a mummy, it's like, I don't know.
And like,
maybe it's a weird wrapper you have to take off.
you can't imagine that they know much about the high-end cigars, because it's not like they're going to be buying them and smoking, right? Like maybe Luke had like one, and they had one of the like $50 cigars like a year, like years ago.
Yeah.
And you're like, I want the $50 one. Is that good? And he's like, I don't know.
It's not my daily smoker.
Yeah.
I mean, the one guy that I'm always in there usually in the afternoon, he's a kind of a bigger guy, going a little bald on top. Nice guy. He's always got a cigar in his hand.
I think I know who you're talking about.
Yeah. And I should probably just ask him, like, what are you smoking? Like, what's your kind of daily go-to?
Yeah.
And I think for some people it's more about affordability. So they're like, oh, I always smoke a $5 cigar, $2 cigar, whatever. And then, or you catch him on an afternoon where it's his birthday and I'm gonna smoke the $20 cigar. I don't know. I've never asked him. And usually there's side conversations happening, so I feel like I'm gonna interrupt something. But yeah, I've kind of found that interesting. With certain cigars in there, it's like, man, do they sell these at all? And how old does a cigar have to be before sitting in a humidor
it's bad,
where it's bad?
Weird, yeah.
Like the...
That's one of my favorites off of the second In Rainbows disc.
I didn't know that was a thing.
It's just like, it's just all the extra stuff they didn't put on the main
I
album.
listened to it. I'm like, this is some pretty good stuff. So.
It's almost as good as In Rainbows.
Yeah, I'm doing like, sorry, I'm gonna make it quick, but I'm doing a little
This is what we're here
Radiohead, like
Your favorites?
Crusade.
Your Crusade?
Yeah, just going through all of the stuff.
Oh,
Yeah,
nice.
just kind of listening to all that. I finished OK Computer, right, that one?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably my favorite album so far.
I told you it would be.
Yeah.
Told
And
you.
I'm on Pablo Honey now. That's doing most popular stuff and then going into more other
Pablo
stuff.
Honey gets a lot of hate, but it's not bad.
No, it's not bad.
It's just kind of like
And they're
sort
best
of a
songs
grunge
from it.
rip. It's a grunge rip-off of all the stuff that was around at the time.
I mean, they're most popular songs from that one, so it's like, I'd imagine.
Which honestly, I don't love Creep that much.
I think it's good.
There's songs on Pablo Honey I like a little bit more. Like Thinking About You.
Well, yeah, like I like a lot of other. There's a bunch of other like Radiohead songs I like way more than Creep, but I don't think Creep's necessarily that.
Creep was so overplayed.
Oh yeah.
So when it came out, I'm listening to pop music. And it was just like every other song on the radio was Creep for so long.
And that's kind of why Nickelback gets a bad rep because of people having to listen to it all the time. They can't really listen to anything else. I mean, also Nickelback's pretty just generic, but I don't know.
Some of their guitar riffs are good.
You know that Nickelback came out with an album that was released on September 11th, 2001. Yeah.
Oh gosh.
I'm just gonna blame them. Just blame Nickelback for.
I mean, it's easy to blame them for everything. So,
But like, what are the odds? It's like, oh, poor Nickelback.
Yeah.
He just had to do it on.
right. No one knew.
Like, I maintain that like almost. That's the key word. Almost any band that's like kind of looked down upon has maybe one or two like great songs hidden in their albums somewhere. Like, there's a guy who I met through my YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Big Jeff Buckley fan. I don't know if you know who that is. Artist from the 90s. But he's also super into Jeff Buckley, Led Zeppelin, a few other like 80s bands, but he's also super into Christian apologetics too.
Oh.
Lives in Canada. And we added each other on Facebook and we chat sometimes and we talk about like Rick Moranis and Dave Thomas and all the Canadian comedy stuff that he grew up with, which is really fun. Like Red Green, he knows that front to back. And
If you're not handsome, you should always be movie.
what was I going with this? The Goo Goo Dolls.
Oh yeah.
Because like, you know, once Iris came out, like people either kind of like they loved Iris or they were just like, Goo Goo Dolls, that's
Right.
cheesy stuff. But he shared with me a few of their earlier tracks, like before the City of Angels soundtrack.
Right.
And they're like, not bad.
Yeah.
Same with Third Eye Blind.
Yes.
Because everyone knows Semi-Charmed Life.
Right.
But there's a couple other songs on that album that are like legitimately good.
Yeah.
And it's like there's just hidden gems everywhere that no one thinks about because they just write off the whole
Yeah.
band. So yeah, that's how I feel about Pablo Honey. It's one of their worst albums because there's a lot of duds on it, but there's some good songs.
Yeah.
They begrudgingly brought back Creep into their live shows like 5 years ago. They hadn't played it for like a decade or two.
Yeah.
And they brought it back and almost kind of made fun of the fact that they were bringing it back.
As far as like for a band, like songs that they just really enjoy performing or playing, like Creep it kind of creeps along. Like it's probably gets a little old to play.
And Riley, you know this, by the Bends, they had already moved on from that sound. Like they were doing different things
Oh,
in
yeah.
the Bends already. So like there's a lot of bands I think that have that like flash in the pan success. And then like at that point they're already ready to move on to something else. So they don't really want to linger in the old ways that they were because they felt like they were just kids ripping off the bands they liked.
Yeah.
Which is how most debut albums are, is just you're ripping off everything you like and hoping that it sounds good enough that it gets popular.
Yeah. Don't linger like the Cranberries.
There's some bands though that just love to play everything they've written. Like they think everything they've written is quality, and they just don't mind going back to anything.
Yeah. I saw Collective Soul here in Junction 3-4 years ago, and they played a little bit of their newer stuff, but you could tell they really enjoyed playing their old stuff.
That's kind of like Foo Fighters, their recent like tours and stuff. Is they've been playing a lot of their like very popular and older stuff rather than their recent stuff. Their recent stuff sounds really weird.
I feel like Weezer is kind of like hit and miss on that, because you can tell there was a time with Weezer where all the fans were kind of like, I don't love the direction you're going in, and so you could tell they tried to like go back to their old sound a little bit, and they even like reference it in their music somewhat. They're still like super hit and miss for me, but I know there was like they did like a Weezer cruise where they did like a cruise ship and they played live on the ship, and they played like all of Blue Album, all of Pinkerton, which I love when bands play like a full album live. That's like even the deep cuts. I have a lot of respect for bands that do that. So it doesn't happen very often. Usually it's just like a massive 2.5-hour set of their big singles from 30 years or whatever. Last concert I went to was at Red Rocks. It was with Haley. So it was probably around when we were married, 2014 or 15. I haven't been to one since. Was the not Imagine Dragons, the 21 Pilots one good?
Very good. It was well, like the thing with 21 Pilots is they're very consistent with their sound. So like they don't change a lot, you know, like other bands, like kind of like Coldplay, you know, like they've changed a good amount with their sound. And I mean, 21 Pilots hasn't been around like for that long either. I mean, I think 2013 is when they started.
No, because the first album was mostly just Tyler and one other guy, right?
Well, it's just Tyler and Josh, really. That's.
But Josh wasn't on the first album.
I don't know.
Have you heard the first album?
A little bit of it. I don't really like a lot of the music from that one, but I mean, I know Tyler did a lot.
Do you like Addict with a Pen?
I probably heard it. I think.
You haven't heard Addict with a Pen?
I don't know. I don't listen to their early stuff.
The Addict with a Pen. That's the only one I've heard off of the first album, and it's probably my favorite 21 Pilots song.
Oh, you gotta cue it up.
All right.
Very, very like emotional song that has a lot of like religious themes to it. About feeling like an inadequate son.
Oh no, yeah.
God.
Sorry, I was thinking Vessel. No, yeah, they have their 2009 is when they started.
2009.
Yeah, so I mean they've been around for a while.
And that was mostly Tyler. I think he had another guy help with like drums and some instruments.
I want to know.
But it's the next one is the one with the two. Was it Vessel?
Yep, that's both of their grandpas. So
is that the second album?
Yep, that's
okay.
so.
And that's when Josh showed up.
Like
right?
Josh has definitely got to be in there. Hopefully.
Yeah, the first one was mostly Tyler, I think. And I've only heard that one track off the first.
Addict with a Pen. Oh, here we go.
On the video Riley shared, it looked like performance-wise and just interesting-wise.
They put on a very good show.
Yeah. A lot of crowd participation and yeah. There's something to be said for that too.
They put some like storytelling into their stuff as well. Looks like.
I know a lot of the story about it. It's really
they have their own little lore in the background.
It's really interesting. I'll put Addict with a Pen on though.
But you guys dressed up for it too, right?
Yes.
Put some jumpsuits on.
No. Well, I wish I had a jumpsuit. That'd be so cool. No, I mean, like, their first album, I don't listen to it. I haven't listened to it a ton. I've probably heard a couple tracks from it. I think they're good. I just like more of the later stuff. I think their early stuff sounds just too... Well, it sounds not my sound, but...
Well, because, especially with the first album, because it's mostly just Tyler, it's probably very minimal.
Yeah,
it's not going to sound like their other things.
Yeah. Which... I don't know. I mean, like, I think it's good. And what was I originally talking about? I mean, yeah, the performance was good. They didn't change a ton of their sound like wise. They do tend to like lean more towards different genres on some albums, but that's because it's the theme of the album. I mean, the latest album that came out is a lot more pop and kind of upbeat than the one before that was more like, I don't want to say rock oriented, but it was more
Trench was more intense.
Yeah, a little more dark. And then Blurryface was still kind of dark, but I mean, there's still some upbeat stuff. A lot of
Blurryface is a little poppy.
Yeah, there's also like, I wouldn't say like reggae, not reggae.
No,
I'm just bringing soup.
Soup.
Soup. I'm not gonna take whiskey.
it's mine. It's all mine.
Just stir it all together.
But no, yeah, it was very performance based because one, they have a story that goes along, so they kind of want to incorporate that through the performance. Two, they just like putting on big performances and all that, and it's just kind of cool.
I mean, usually the biggest live bands that have like the biggest, what would be the term, like audience poll, like
turnout,
yeah. Are the ones that put on the really great shows.
Yeah,
like,
and
that's why Coldplay has done so well, and they're at this point like semi-retiring. Like they're just going to be making like, I think they're going to do one more album, and then they said they're maybe going to like slow it down and do like EPs or singles. But
I want them to make another album. I don't want it to be like the last one. I
agree. The last one was my least favorite.
Yeah, I didn't like it a ton. I love a lot of Coldplay stuff they released before Parachutes. Like a lot of the earlier sounding songs.
Blue Room, and that's good stuff.
It is really good. I mean, I heard a version of Don't Panic that sounds a little different.
That's the one on Blue Room.
Yeah. Which is it's on cue, and it sounds similar, but it's a little different. But I like it. You know?
I agree.
But
Coldplay's B-sides are arguably better than a lot of the songs on their actual. Which it kind of pisses me off when bands do that, when they feel like they need to put like those as B-sides, and I'm like, that's the best stuff.
That's the good stuff.
Yeah.
Like, you don't hide it. You know?
Do you know what B-side means, Ron?
I don't know if I'm...
It doesn't really happen much anymore, but do you want to explain, or should I?
My understanding is, back when you think of a cassette tape, there's side A and side B.
Vinyl.
Or vinyl.
Goes back to vinyl.
You know?
Yeah, there was a, I would say, oh, is this Attic with a Pen? You can turn it off if you want. Really nice piano part on this one.
Yeah, I think he knows 3 or 4 instruments now. Because he was originally did piano and then bass, and then he learns electric guitar for Scaled and Icy, which is a cool guitar solo.
Yeah, I know on the last album he learned guitar for it, right?
Yeah. In one of his songs, he's like, I was watching on YouTube, like I was seeing like too much stuff on the tube, you know, and I was getting like sick of it. So I learned electric guitar or whatever, and then he goes into a guitar solo, which I think is kind of cool.
What was I just saying? I keep getting derailed so easily. I'm so
I know.
sorry.
This is good. I like this. I don't know if I've heard this one.
Yeah, you would like this one a lot. It warrants a listen with the lyrics up on your own time. It's very, very emotional.
I love the album art on this one.
It's really good.
I mean, they mostly have pretty good album art. Like, I mean, Blurryface is very symbolic. Vessel, I don't really know what it means. I know it's just their grandpas, which I think is kind of
hanging out.
Yeah. But Blurryface is like really symbolic. Trench is cool, also symbolic. Scaled and Icy just plays right into the story of the dragon.
What was I saying?
Kind of sounds like Josh Dunn on the drums, but it might be somebody else. I don't know.
I'm pretty sure it's someone else on this first album.
I'm gonna search it out. I want to see what Josh does.
Talking about the B-sides. I was going to say, you'll probably listen to it, but I think the best single that ever has come out was Beach Boys' wouldn't it be nice on the A side? God only knows on the B side. And there's some singles where it's like, I've noticed this pattern, especially like as I react to stuff, because I went through the top 10 singles from all the different years. And there were some times where I would know the A side, and so like, okay, I'll react to the B side, I've heard that. And I noticed this, it's either one of two things. It's either a complementary B side. So you have the A side that's like the big song. And then the B side is like the lesser known one, but it's very similar to it. And it complements it. And then there's the contrast, where it's like, oh, let's put, this as our big single, but we'll put this really weird, completely different genre thing as the B side. So you have a little bit of variety on your record that you bought. So yeah, that's kind of where it comes from. Is like back then, vinyls, even on CDs. On CDs, they would prefer to release like 2, maybe 3 tracks, because you could have 2 B sides. So it's like the A side, is getting the most rotation in the CD or cassette or vinyl. But then the B side, 1 or 2 tracks that are like, maybe it's another smaller track on the album, or it's like just something that wasn't on the album that we're releasing here. And then a lot of bands will make compilations later on that are just B-sides. Like I know the Smiths, they have an album called Hatful of Hollow that's almost just considered an album, which is most of their B-sides from like the 5 years, or the first like 2 years they were active. And it makes up a full album that's all just B-sides that weren't on the albums. And so that's very common. Unfortunately, like most people don't realize that stuff exists, so you have to kind of look out for it. But that's usually the most like artistic output by a band, is the stuff that gets relegated to the B-sides because record labels are scared of not sounding poppy enough.
Yeah. I think when I bought Smashing Pumpkins, was it their Melancholy album?
That was a double album.
It was a double
thing was
album,
long.
and I think like it was like 2 CDs, and the second CD was like all B-side.
Really?
It had not the Melancholy was upbeat, but it's like all the B-side stuff was even more like depressing and heavier.
Which I've noticed a lot with 80s and 90s bands is that the B-side, because back then, and like this doesn't happen now, this is a really interesting like psychological thing with music that people don't think about, and it's something I've noticed as I've done these reactions, is that back when they would construct albums around the flip of a vinyl, which maybe like 80s is when the CD kind of started to take over, right? You would probably know more about that than I would. In the late 80s. I don't know when CDs became the commonplace thing, but with vinyls especially, and even people in the bands in the 80s still valued the vinyl, and they wanted to create their track listing around the vinyl, or they would do a different track listing for the vinyl and the CD. The B-side would be a little bit darker, or it would be a little bit of a different mood.
Yeah. Let's see if the audience has a taste for that.
Yes.
This is stuff we've been working on.
Yes. Good example of that would be a David Bowie album called Low that he did in like 77. And the A side is like, more of just the, weird, quirky, poppy Bowie that we all know. But then the B side, the album was produced by Brian Eno, who's like an ambient artist. So the B side, it has a couple of those popular tracks, but there's also more, the B side has like the instrumental ambient synth stuff that's just not anything like the A side.
Yeah. Almost like an experiment.
Yes.
Yeah.
Even going through these REM albums, I've noticed that like the B side, it just has a different vibe than the A side. And it can just be like 4 tracks, 6 tracks, 6 tracks. But seeing where the split is, it's like, oh, this definitely has a different rhythm to it. You know, it's almost like 2 movements of music that they had to figure out. And that doesn't happen now because we don't have to worry about A-sides and B-sides.
Yep.
So albums are able to flow more as a whole rather than as 2 parts, because you don't have to flip a vinyl anymore.
Yep.
So it's an interesting part of the like psychology of listening to music that people like me and Riley don't have to experience, but because I'm listening to this old music, I'm realizing was part of the culture back then.
Yep. I remember going to the record stores in the mall. I was probably middle school to high school. And singles, were still maybe they came out. You could either get it on a 45 with a paper sleeve, or on cassette. Yeah.
Interesting.
And so I probably, I don't know where the conversion was from vinyl to say like 8-track, which was like a hot minute, and then actual the smaller cassettes.
Right.
But I had my fair share of cassette tapes, and I remember making mixtapes. That was a big thing.
Yeah.
And then really just everything went to CD. CDs were the thing for a long time.
Which, like, Riley, I know you made a playlist for your lady friend. Like, there was some, and I never experienced this, but I know this to be the case. There had to have been something special about crafting a cassette tape of individual songs. Because you had to go in and, make sure that you were recording at the right time, stopping it, and then making, being like, okay, this song will flow really well into this song.
Labor of love.
Yes, exactly. Which, nowadays, we just, there they are. They're done.
Very much. Andrea still has her mixtape that I made for her before we were here.
Really?
Yeah.
What's on it?
Oh my goodness. It's a weird mix. There's some Alison Krauss on there. Definitely Goo Goo Dolls.
Because you want it to be when you make I shouldn't say playlist, when you make a selection of songs for a lady, you want to show that you have some grit, but you also want to show that you have a heart and a tender side.
I might sneak one in there that's into thinking.
Yeah.
What does he mean by that?
There you go. The art of the mixtape.
We had no way to play it, and then a friend of ours, Melinda, her parents were clearing out all of her old stuff from when she was young, and they brought a bunch of it out. And one was a boombox, big speakers, one cassette, in the middle. So we throw that mixtape in there. It's all like wobbly. I don't know if the tape went bad or if the boombox is bad, the heads are bad. I don't know.
I love that when I was making the analog horror stuff, it's a really interesting thing as a creative person to make something that authentically imitates an older medium. So it's I'm digitally making all this stuff, but it needs to look and sound like it came from a VHS or a mini DV tape. And so there's plenty of stuff to make it look like a VHS, but I want the audio to sound like it's from a VHS.
Yeah.
And as I researched it, I realized because it's reading a tape, kind of like how when you play a stringed instrument, when you increase the surface tension, it creates a higher note. Same thing happens with tape. Because the tape heads in machines are imperfect, that's why you get the pitch warble. It's almost like it's not exactly perfectly representing the actual original source audio. Because as the tape is going across, there's different surface tension, and so you're getting high and low pitches just ever so slightly.
Yeah. That makes sense.
And I love that sound. It sounds so nostalgic to me.
We would would buy head cleaners. So it was basically a cassette that had like a thin cloth.
Yeah.
And you put like a couple drops of isopropyl alcohol.
I remember that. You get the little like thing that you put in there. Yeah. As a kid, I never understood like why do I need to clean the VCR? It's so weird.
Struggle.
Did you watch the
I did.
Chris Martin, Michael Stipe cover?
I liked it a lot. And then I found this song, and then
that guy, what's his name? Joseph Arthur?
Yeah.
Christian guy who's recently, like, that song is from like early 2000s,
I think so.
something like that. It's pretty old, but he's recently kind of been like discredited because he's a Republican who cares about. I think he was like anti-vax, and so everyone's like written him off, which is kind of sad.
Anti-science.
Anti-science. Which I find funny that Chris Martin and Michael Stipe, who I know are both very left-leaning, covered a song by someone who would go on to be anti-vax. What'd you think of Night Swimming?
Night Swimming?
Yeah. Did you listen to that one?
Was that the other one you said?
That was the other one.
I liked it.
Okay, good.
I don't know if it was my personal sound, but I think it was fine. I liked it.
It's kind of a hit and, like, because I know you like Coldplay and The Fray. It's always like...
It is a hit and miss.
Hit and miss when it comes to, like, recommending piano-based stuff.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like depends on the piano, and now for some reason I'm kind of like really into the acoustic guitar sound.
Okay.
But like I don't know. Like I've kind of,
like folkier stuff, or just like acoustic rockier stuff?
Do you know like High and Dry by Radiohead, like that?
Okay.
So like I don't know about folk-y, but like
that's a rockier song.
yeah, I'd say that then.
Okay.
You know, just something kind of chill and like I don't know. That's what I've been wanting to do.
Acoustic guitar is underutilized in music, I feel, because it has such a nice sound. Especially like if it's a good guitarist who can play well, they can come up with really nice guitar parts.
And you can mess around with the tuning, which makes it like Goo Goo Dolls.
Yeah.
They dropped the D down, did some different stuff, and like even just the way they were tuning their guitar, just all open strings. It's like, oh, that's Goo Goo Dolls.
Yes.
It's like that's kind of cool.
Yeah. Skinny Love.
Yeah.
That's an alternate tune. And you can like tell it when you're like listening. It's like, oh, that sounds like a different guitar tone than I've heard before. And it's like, it's an alternate tune.
So Riley, you're thinking about putting together a band.
He told me about this.
Yeah.
You've got 2 drummers, which is an unusual.
Yeah. I don't know how we go about it, but next time we meet up, we'll try to talk to everybody about it. I don't know.
I wondered, like, going from since you have 2 drummers,
what to do, but other than that, it's really simple.
all right, you could, keys would be another option. But I don't think any of you guys play keys.
Brett does. Yeah, so I think he's doing the keys and vocals on it.
Oh, okay.
Oh, wait, no, Brett doesn't. Maybe he does, I don't know. I'm not sure. I think Aiden's played the piano, though. I mean, he doesn't know a ton on it, but he knows some songs.
If you could get your hands on a bass guitar without, making a huge financial commitment, that'd be kind of interesting.
Yeah, mess around with it.
You just have them start slapping the bass a little bit and seeing if it catches.
Riley, have you heard of the band Keen? Somewhere Only We Know and all that?
Yep.
For their first 3, maybe 4 albums, they didn't have a bass player.
Really?
It was vocals, piano, and drums.
Okay.
Yeah, and they just used the piano as the bass instrument.
Okay.
So, it's you don't have to rely on the classic 4-piece setup if it doesn't work out. But it's I'd almost say if it's more trouble to get someone to play a bass than it is to just do your music in a way that doesn't rely on the bass, then like just do it
Yeah.
to where like you can just adapt.
The main thing is just doing the covers, you know, like because some songs may need bass. Like song 2 definitely needs bass, but I don't know. It does depend. I mean, if we do start making music, which I think that'd be very cool, we could try to just make our music around not having the bass. So, which I know, Bo, who's gonna be on the electric guitar, his brother plays the bass, but I don't know like if he's interested in doing the band thing. But I'm not sure because I know they have a bass at their house. So I mean, like if we ever practice, one's there, one's available. So I don't know if like Aiden would ever want to mess around with that and maybe buy his own, or if he's just not into it. Like if Bo's brother might want to be into it, I don't know. But well, I mean, I'll have to talk with him about it. But I think it's kind of cool too. So. Dang man, if there was no wind, I'd be perfectly fine. I'm just dying, bro. I got cold once, and then I felt sick afterwards, and then anytime I get cold, I get like PTSD, and my body's like, don't get cold.
Don't do it.
Oh, it was terrible. I was at work one day, and it was actually not a bad day. Like, well, it was pretty bad because I was on iPads outside all the day, and then it was raining and cold, and the wind kept coming through, and I wasn't properly like, I didn't have a ton of stuff like layers on. I mean, I had a good amount, it just wasn't enough. And then after work, I just kind of felt cruddy, and then the whole night I just had shivers, even though I was cold. So I was just sitting there shivering in my bed for no reason. And then the next day I was just like sore, and just not feeling good.
It's a really bad story.
I know, it was terrible. So now anytime like I don't know, I feel like oh, if I got that cold, I should be more like hardened towards it. But I'm not. Like if I get cold, I'm like, it's not fun.
That's how I am after my incident driving to Disneyland. Do you know about that?
What?
I posted a video about it on YouTube, but I don't know how many like family members I told. But when we went to Disneyland, Felicity was maybe almost 2. So it was like 2017 or 18, something like that. We drove down there. And it was us in our car, and then Bethany and her kids in their car. And then I think Amy, Haley's other sister, like drove in a different way or flew in or something. I can't remember. But we stopped halfway through the drive in Mesquite, stayed there, and as we were leaving Mesquite, my drive belt just like exploded. It just disintegrated while I was driving as I was getting onto the interstate out of Mesquite. And so we stopped on the side of the road, and like when you don't have a drive belt, it's like you're running off the battery, your power steering isn't working anymore, and your battery is not being charged, and your AC isn't working. So like literally all the worst things that could have happened were happening. I tried to like keep driving it to get it off the road. Eventually we had to like get it towed and fixed. And so like I have like heat PTSD because of like trying to like, we had to get like the kids into the other car where there was AC, and it was like 105 degrees.
Oh my gosh.
And I was out there for probably like 2 hours trying to get the car off the road and to a safe place. So I know how you feel.
Yeah, I'm just the
It's
opposite.
like heat stroke, It's
A little bit.
Heat intolerant after that.
And I think I had like, I was like, the adrenaline was kind of suppressing some stuff because partway in, we did a day at Legoland instead of Disneyland, and that one day I just like had a terrible fever, and I just had to stay in the car and just sweat it out while they were doing Legoland. So overall it was good, but I had to get a new drive belt, and then once we got there, my starter stopped working.
Nice.
So I had to get the starter fixed on a Sunday in California. But
So,
new one.
good example of a cigar company that's very proud of their cigar. So the entire thing is wrapped in labels. That's the Monte Cristo. So you really can't even light it.
You can advertise it.
Like
You have to
first.
kind of have to take them off.
It's a present. You have to unwrap it first.
Yeah, I've never seen a cigar.
Alex, are you like a boots type of guy? Like, do you like wearing boots at all, or
No.
no, not really?
I wear DC shoes, and that's mostly it. I only have one pair of shoes, so
I mean, hey, if they work, then I wouldn't.
I wouldn't be against boots. I've just never been able to afford them, and I'm not that interested. I like things that feel a little more comfortable.
Yeah.
Oh, this one's a complete wrapper in and of itself.
Yeah, it's like a nutrition label or something.
Now I'm just thinking about the climbing up the walls and the major key thing.
Yeah. Well, when you sent that to me, I'm like, wait, it does sound weird, but like, there's a good song here. So then I found the original. I'm like, this is really good.
It's kind of happy.
And then I listened to the rest of OK Computer. You know what? Like, I think Paranoid Android is the only one I'm not the biggest fan of, and that's like really the more popular one on there. You know?
Well, that's just because it's like 6 minutes of like crazy insanity.
Yeah.
It's really I don't go back to it that much, but it's like really impressive.
But I like this song a lot.
My favorites off of OK Computer are Karma Police.
That's a good one.
Exit Music I love,
That one's good.
which was on the Romeo and Juliet soundtrack with Leo DiCaprio. Yeah. I think No Surprises is a little overrated, but it's good.
It's on TikTok. It was on TikTok a lot.
Let Down, I think, is good. Oh gosh, there's one other one that I know I like. I can't recall what it is.
Is it Lucky?
It might be Lucky.
The Tourist?
I think it's Lucky.
I think the Let Down kind of sounds like a Coldplay song.
It's very kind of like slow and just kind of steady moving. It's not super rocky. This one's interesting.
Yeah.
Still very smooth. Got a better flavor, I think.
Yeah, I'd agree. A little bit of pepper at the start.
Oh yeah. It's spicy. I feel kind of guilty, Greg, because we're talking about a bunch of music from your generation that you don't seem to care about or know about.
It's alright.
What would you say, like, in the 90s, when you existed in the 90s, what were your favorite bands during that decade? Like, not like ones before, but like bands that were making music in the 90s. I know you liked Fuel a little bit, right?
Yeah. I liked kind of some of the
like the post-grunge bands that were still
post-grunge,
kind of doing that stuff.
kind of hard rock. You'd even call it hard rock. I don't know what that means.
A little noisier, maybe.
A little noisier. Yeah, so, pre-grunge, kind of...
There was stuff like Sonic Youth.
Yeah.
And,
gosh. You had Guns N' Roses.
Okay.
That was like a big band. That's pre-grunge.
Yeah, I call that like a hard rock kind of thing.
Duran Duran made a comeback. They had some interesting stuff. Aerosmith was still doing their thing, continuing to crank out albums. So it was mostly that stuff.
Okay.
REM, of course. You had just some great standard stuff that was always out there. And then grunge came along and kind of turned the whole sound on its head. I didn't really get grunge at first. I remember when Pearl Jam was on Saturday Night Live or one of those shows. I'm like, who is this? I'm like, what is he saying? I don't understand a word he's saying. And he's like got holes in his jeans and he's wearing a flannel over the top of like a screen printed t-shirt and he's got long hair, but he's not like, he's not wearing like leather and it isn't like a leather rock band. Like, what's going on here? And then, kind of the more I heard, and of course Nirvana did their thing, and I'm like, okay, I get it.
Yeah.
And then you had offshoots of that, which, even like Smashing Pumpkins, which really wasn't true grunge, but was kind of its own thing.
They say that like grunge needs to be from Seattle.
Right, the Seattle sound.
Which, I mean, I kind of get that, but like that's not required, I don't think. Because people always imitate other sounds.
And I'd definitely say there's a chunk of bands that were like early Seattle sound. You know, I would say like that's like old pure grunge. But then of course you had all the other offshoots. You know, and then that kind of morphed into like Collective Soul. So I really got into Collective Soul. I really enjoyed their music. That wasn't grunge. I don't know. The 90s were interesting. I think there's a lot of good music in the 90s. And I probably did not partake in as much as I should have. Blues Traveler. Really interesting band.
Not heard of it.
Yeah. Guy plays a harmonica. And it's kind of, I don't know, it's a bluesy rock band. Very interesting, yeah.
Did you listen to much progressive rock? Was that your thing at all? No? No Pink Floyd?
Never got into it a whole lot. I mean, I was around a lot of people that listen to that stuff all the time, so I felt like I was always partaking.
Sure.
I got into the Beatles for a while. You know, I worked in the back kitchen of Dos Hombres for 4 years, and so it was nonstop. Yeah, Pink Floyd and Black Sabbath, and just straight Aussie. Got my fill of all that. And there's some good stuff there. I don't, as far as the music genre, it's like it's not my favorite, but there's some good stuff peppered in there.
That first Black Sabbath album, I mean, everyone always says that like Helter Skelter invented metal to some degree, which some of the aspects of Helter Skelter are definitely like some of the foundations that would become metal riffs and stuff. Yeah, that first Black Sabbath album, which was like late 70s, that was kind of the first heavy metal, and it just feels like hard rock.
Yeah.
It doesn't even feel strictly like what you think of when you think of metal.
Right.
Yes, I think I listened to the actual. There's a Black Sabbath track, right? Just called Black Sabbath. I think I listened to that on one of my streams.
Okay.
And that was really interesting to hear, like the first arrival of metal on the scene. Because I'm like, this sounds kind of tame.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like dark and brooding,
Right.
but it's it's not like.
It's like not like death metal.
It's not death metal.
Yeah.
It's not that aggressive.
Yeah.
It's just more moody. It's okay if I have this one.
Yep.
Do you have the different one? Not the guillotine, but
Yeah, and then Andrea, she got into a lot more of the industrial rock, industrial metal stuff.
That's so weird to me.
Yeah, I would agree.
Like, of all the people to be into like 9 Inch Nails or whatever,
Yeah.
she's not the one I would have expected.
No.
But then she got into like the R&B, the hip hop,
Yep.
which is she's more eclectic than me. You gotta.
I would agree with that.
Everyone always says like, I love all music except hip hop and country, and I'm like, I'm kind of one of those people.
Yeah.
Andrea apparently not.
I think if a hip hop, depending on what it is, and if you're in a fun car, you kind of want to have a little bass going.
hip hop isn't even that bad. I just don't like rap that much.
Hip hop, it's so insular to like a certain culture that like, especially I've noticed that West Coast hip hop from California, usually a little bit more intense, more hardcore, more based around California, whereas East Coast was a little bit more like fun and brighter. Like, so you had like Will Smith, DJ Jazzy Jeff and all that.
Oh, yeah.
That was East Coast. Tribe Called Quest, that was East Coast. A lot of the people like more from New York, they were just kind of making like sort of, it was still often like political and whatnot, but it was just easier to take than the more like hardcore aggressive stuff
Didn't
from
have
California.
that gang.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was just more like I'm a guy rapping about, the ghetto that I came from.
Right.
Rather than like I saw someone die and it's like,
I'm gonna bust a cap.
yeah. It's like I can't relate. Cannot relate.
Not gonna be the crack spider. It's funny that you'd seen that video. Like Jake and the YouTube video I shared with you about the different spiders
Yes.
and giving them the different compounds. I'm surprised I'd never seen that. You can tell it was probably made back in the 90s or something. I mean, it's...
Well, that upload was like 15 years ago.
Is it?
Yeah. I don't know the origins of it, but I had seen it a while ago.
It starts out just like, oh, this is legit. This is a guy from the Nature Channel, yeah. And it just quickly digresses.
Yeah. Good stuff.
The whereabouts about the witch spider, go to... It's like, what?
And I don't know if that's like a different dub that sounds official, or if that was actually like part of the thing it came from. I don't know.
Don't know, yeah. I mean, to go to the extent of having spiders on a web and putting like the little cotton swab next to it, it's like, who's going to go to that effort?
Who's doing that? What are they actually doing there?
I'm guessing it was probably based on something legit. And then it just, someone decided, let's make this
Give
funny.
narcotics to spiders and see what happens.
But whoever's narrating, it's like the perfect voice.
Yeah, it's too authentic.
Yeah, it's like the... Oh, what was that show we'd watch growing up? It was always after school. It was like the Wide World of Animals or something. It was like that guy's voice.
Like a
No, in the Western side. We had
like David Attenborough. Like
Yeah.
Here we see Riley in his natural habitat. He is stirring up leaves and making a call for a mate.
And unsurprisingly,
He will never find
a
one.
female lioness is creeping in the bush.
Well, he's being disemboweled.
No, he's dead.
And then he's done.
Good luck to your descendants, Riley. Hopefully they won't fall into the same trap.
So definitely a better cigar.
Yeah, it's I think
Similar.
it's as smooth, but I
Yeah.
like the taste more.
Yeah. The draw's decent. It's a little slightly lighter, a little bit of a leathery
Yeah.
finish.
I think I prefer this a bit. Just my own personal taste.
Go back and check prices again. And some, like I had something the other day came through, it was like 50% off, and it was like a box of 20 of something that had like a 90 score. I'm like, do I buy that? Like, I mean, that's a pretty good, rating, but I've never smoked it, but it's 50% off and free shipping, but only today. So they just have an overstock, or
Maybe.
I don't know.
Well, it seems like so far all the ones you've bought based on the ratings have been really good.
I would agree with that. Like, definitely worth smoking. Like, no duds at all.
They're all super smooth. There hasn't been one that's jumped out to me as far as flavor.
Yeah. And part of that could be they're all like Maduros. So I wonder, need to maybe get something that's just a
little bit lighter.
fresh, light leaf. It's not aged.
Maybe.
Probably higher nicotine content.
I mean, maybe this is the thing, is like a good Maduro actually is super smooth.
It's just supposed to be smooth.
Yeah. Not very, more of a plateau rather than hills and valleys.
Possibly. Oh, we were talking about how long is a cigar good in a humidor?
Yeah.
But then, like, the edge that we got, those are aged 5 years. It's
Right.
like whiskey or something. It's like, all right, so it's probably mellowing out as it ages, but if you go on a ranch and something's been sitting there for 2 years, open, the environment. So.
I know that pipe tobacco has it has its own windows of quality. Same with like wine. Aromatics, after the year mark, you start to lose the aromatic flavor that was attributed to it. So like aging and aromatic, you want to probably only go up to like 6 months to a year. But some people will age non-aromatics for like, after they buy it, they'll keep it for like 5, 7, 10 years. And it's just like the sugars just come out and it's just a way smoother smoke. I have no idea how a cigar fares as far as age goes.
Because if it's open to the air, there's going to be spores that are introduced,
Right.
molds and mildews potentially. But like I'm using that saline or not saline,
Propylene glycol.
propylene glycol with the distilled water, and so that way you don't have those molds and stuff.
That's all I've used in my humidor that I've had for probably like 3-4 years, and I've had no problems. You know about the, I think it's the tobacco beetles. You know about that? Apparently, like, because they don't, as far as I know, I think they keep the tobacco fairly organic. I could be wrong. But I know that there is a common enough thing of these beetles that love the tobacco leaf that get just like the eggs or whatever can get like rolled up with the cigars, and you'll just smoke them. Yeah, I don't know how commonly it happens. Enough to be like not rare,
Yeah.
but like you don't really taste it or smell it. It's just there's a tiny little carcass of a beetle that you smoked. That's just in the cigar leaf.
Extra protein.
Yeah.
Well, it's like we had that infestation of those pantry moths in the summer.
Yeah.
They like just keep seeing them on the ceiling around, just little moths. And we finally realized that they were in a bunch of our packaged food. But the question is, did they come in the packaged food? And so we looked it up, and sure enough, that's how you usually get it. Is it comes in like I've got like a Bisquick
Yeah.
pancake batter box, and they're actually in the mix. They're the larvae. They hatch, then they eat through the packaging, and then they go to other packages. And I found one we had
Is that common
I guess so.
with Bisquick and whatever else?
Especially that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Wow.
So if you were to go to the factory, you'd probably see these things flying around and packages and gross off.
Yeah.
We had a box of little pretzel nuggets or pretzel bibs or whatever they're called.
Yeah.
And it was in a sealed plastic and clear plastic container. Ended up getting pushed all the way to the back of our cabinet pantry top shelf. I pulled that out. It looked like the entire thing was like webs. I already told you about this. Webs and larvae in there, and the moths are in there. I'm like, it was like a science experiment. I took photos of it. It's like something out of Stranger Things. It was the grossest thing I've ever seen. So we don't know if that was like ground zero, and then somehow they ate their way through the plastic container. I don't know. Or they just were in there, and we left it in there long enough that they just took it over from the inside out.
Yeah.
So we had to get these little, like tent-shaped cards that have pheromones and then sticky stuff on the inside, and we put those up around the house, and it attracts the males. So it's like a pheromone. So it attracts the males, and as long as you kill off all the males, eventually the females will just die off. And so it took all summer to get rid of them all.
Wow.
Yeah, and so we threw away almost all the dried goods in our pantry. They would even like eat into like if we had like a bag of rice that was sealed. We were buying some from Sam's during the pandemic. Just wanted to kind of stock up on some stuff just in case. And they ended up getting inside of those unopened. So they just like ate through the plastic outer. So threw all that away, and then anything else that seemed like it was okay or anything new we bought, like cereal, we just immediately put it into a plastic bin that had like an airtight lid on it. And so I think we're now good, but like I'm sure we ate our fair share of pantry moth larvae. Thinking about it now, yeah.
It's so disturbing.
Not gonna kill you, but it's kind of gross.
It is kind of gross. Yeah. I remember having moldy beef jerky one time without knowing about it.
Got halfway into it, or
Yeah, I had just not noticed that it was on the piece of one that I was eating. And it was like eating like cobwebs. And like, I'm eating beef jerky for a few months. That's for sure. That's gross. How long have we been recording?
Almost 2 hours.
Just past 7.
it's way later, but yeah, it's getting dark earlier.
Kind of nice to start earlier because we can can stop whenever, but like even if we went the almost 4 hours we normally do, like we'd be done by like 9, right, which is nice.
That is nice, actually.
Is it time for me to read Apologetics?
Yes. Riley, how's that lung?
It's good.
Yeah.
Are you okay?
It's really cold.
I'm sorry.
I'm probably gonna go inside for like a little bit.
Okay, go for it.
I'll be back.
It's not been on this side of the fire. Like, we could move
It's
the table.
been blowing at me. Do you want to switch places?
fine.
Okay.
Right here, Riley, this is like pure heat.
I'll just.
The wind is not in your favor,
Not
apparently.
really.
Yeah, you can go warm up. Okay.
So,
Riley, go start the fire in there and stand by it.
stand by it.
Not in it.
To the Defenders. There's a foreword by Lee Strobel.
Oh, nice.
Alright, so, chapter 1. I figure, might as well just go chronologically through this.
Yeah.
Alright. So it says, chapter 1, what is apologetics? And it has a verse, 1 Peter 3:15. Always be prepared to make a defense to anyone who calls you to account for the hope that is in you. It says, I teach a Sunday school class called Defenders to about 100 people, from high schoolers to senior adults, at our home church in Atlanta. And he actually live streams this. Have I told you about Defenders? The church that he attends in Atlanta, I don't think he does it anymore because of COVID and he's getting older.
Yeah.
But he taught 3 cycles of this class, and every cycle he basically adds more information as he does research into different topics. But it's just a comprehensive Christian doctrine class where they cover like doctrine of God, doctrine of creation, doctrine of Christ, doctrine of man, doctrine of the last things like Revelation, doctrine of salvation. That's cool. All that stuff. We talk about what the Bible teaches and about how to defend it. Sometimes people who aren't in our class don't understand what we do. One fine Southern lady, upon hearing that I teach Christian apologetics, remarked indignantly, "I'll never apologize for my faith."
That's awesome.
The reason for her misunderstanding is obvious. Apologetics sounds like apologize. But apologetics is not the art of telling somebody that you're sorry you're a Christian. Rather, apologetics comes from the Greek word apologia, which means a defense, as in a court of law. Christian apologetics involves making a case for the truth of the Christian faith. The Bible actually commands us to have such a case ready to give to any unbeliever who wants to know why we believe what we do. Just as the contestants in a fencing match have learned both to parry each attack as well as to go on the offensive themselves, so we must always be on guard. And it references that verse. Notice the attitude we're supposed to have when giving our defense. We should be gentle and respectful. Apologetics is not the art of making somebody else sorry that you're a Christian. We can present a defense of the Christian faith without becoming defensive. We can present arguments for Christianity without becoming argumentative. When I talk in this book about arguments for the Christian faith, it's vital to understand that I don't mean quarreling. We should never quarrel with a non-believer about our faith. That only makes people mad and drives them away. As I'll explain later in this chapter, an argument is, in the philosophical sense, is not a fight or a heated exchange. It's just a series of statements leading to a conclusion, that's all. Ironically, if you have good arguments in support of your faith, you're less apt to become quarrelsome or upset. I find that the better my arguments, the less argumentative I am. The better my defense, the less defensive I am. If you have good reasons for what you believe and know the answers to the unbeliever's questions or objections, there's just no reason to get hot under the collar. Instead, you'll find yourself calm and confident when you're under attack because you know you have the answers. I frequently debate on university campuses on topics like, does God exist? Or Christianity versus atheism. Sometimes, students in the audience get up during the Q&A period and attack me personally or go on an abusive rant. I find that my reaction to these students is not anger, but rather simply feeling sorry for them because they're so mixed up. If you have good reasons for what you believe, then instead of anger, you'll feel a genuine compassion for the unbeliever, who is often so misled. Good apologetics involves speaking the truth in love. Some people think that apologetics is unbiblical. They say that you should just preach the gospel and let the Holy Spirit do his work. But I think that the example of Jesus and the apostles affirms the value of apologetics. Jesus appealed to miracles and to fulfilled prophecy to prove that his claims were true. He references Luke 24:25 through 27, John 14:11. What about the apostles? In dealing with other Jews, they used fulfilled prophecy, Jesus' miracles, and especially Jesus' resurrection to prove that he was the Messiah. Take, for example, Peter's sermon on the day of Pentecost recorded in the 2nd chapter of Acts. In verse 22, he appeals to Jesus' miracles. In verses 25 to 31, he appeals to fulfilled prophecy. In 32, he appeals to Christ's resurrection. By means of these arguments, the apostles sought to show their fellow Jews that Christianity is true. In dealing with non-Jews, the apostles sought to show the existence of God through his handiwork in nature. In Romans 1, Paul says that from nature alone, men can know that God exists. Paul also appealed to eyewitness testimony of Jesus' resurrection to show further that Christianity is true. So it's clear that both Jesus and the apostles were not afraid to give evidence for the truth of what they proclaimed. This doesn't mean they didn't trust the Holy Spirit to bring people to God. Rather, they trusted the Holy Spirit to use their arguments and evidence to bring people to God. It's vitally important that Christians today be trained in apologetics. Why? Let me give 3 reasons. 1, shaping culture. We've all heard of the so-called culture war going on in American society. Some people may not like this militaristic metaphor, but the truth is that a tremendous struggle for the soul of America is raging right now. This struggle is not political. It has a religious or spiritual dimension as well. Secularists are bent on eliminating religion from the public square. The so-called new atheists, represented by people like Sam Harris, Richard Dawkins, and Christopher Hitchens, are even more aggressive. They want to exterminate religious belief entirely. American society has already become post-Christian. Belief in a sort of generic God is still the norm, but belief in Jesus Christ is now politically incorrect. How many films coming out of Hollywood portray Christians in a positive way? How many times do we instead find Christians portrayed as shallow, bigoted, villainous hypocrites? What is the public perception of Bible-believing Christians in our culture today? Why are these considerations of culture important? Why can't we Christians just be faithful followers of Christ and ignore what is going on in the culture at large? Why not just preach the gospel to a dark and dying world? The answer is because the gospel is never heard in isolation. It is always heard against the backdrop of the culture in which you've been born and raised. A person who has been raised in a culture that is sympathetic to the Christian faith will be open to the gospel in a way that a person brought up in a secular culture will not. For a person who is thoroughly secularized, you may as well tell them to believe in fairies or leprechauns as in Jesus Christ. That's how absurd the message of Christ will seem to him. To see the influence of culture in your own thinking, imagine what you would think if a Hindu devotee of the Hare Krishna movement with his shaved head and saffron robe approached you at the airport or shopping mall, offering you a flower and inviting you to become a follower of Krishna. Such an invitation would likely strike you as bizarre, freakish, maybe even a bit funny. But think of how differently someone in Delhi, India would react if he were approached by such a person. Having been raised in a Hindu culture, he might take such an invitation very seriously. If America's slide into secularism continues, then what awaits us tomorrow is already evident today in Europe. Western Europe has become so secularized that it's hard for the gospel to even get a fair hearing. Pause for whiskey.
Yes.
As a result, missionaries must labor for years to win even a handful of converts. Having lived for 13 years in Europe, in 4 different countries, I can testify personally to how hard it is for people to respond to the message of Christ. Speaking on university campuses around Europe, I found that students' reaction was often bewilderment. Christianity is supposed to be for old women and children, they would think. So what's with this man who's earned 2 doctorates from European universities doing here defending the truth of the Christian faith with arguments we can't answer? Once, when I was speaking at a university in Sweden, a student asked me during the Q&A following my talk, "What are you doing here?" Puzzled, I said, "Well, I've been invited by the religious students studies department to give this lecture." "That's not what I mean," he insisted. "Don't you understand how unusual this is? I want to know what motivates you to personally come to do this." I suspect that he had never seen a Christian philosopher before. In fact, a prominent Swedish philosopher told me that there are no Christian philosophers at any university in Sweden. The student's question gave me the chance to share the story of how I came to Christ. The skepticism on, I don't know how long this is. I'm not going to be able to finish this whole chapter. I'll find a good stopping point. Maybe I'll go up to the second point because it's still on the culture one.
Yeah.
The skepticism on European university campuses runs so deep that when I spoke on the existence of God at the University of Porto in Portugal, the students, as I later learned, actually telephoned the Higher Institute of Philosophy at the University of Louvain in Belgium, where I was affiliated, to see if I was an imposter. They thought I was a fake. I just didn't fit into their stereotype of a Christian. If the gospel is to be heard as an intellectually viable option for thinking men and women today, then it's vital that we as Christians try to shape American culture in such a way that Christian belief cannot be dismissed as mere superstition. This is where Christian apologetics comes in. If Christians could be trained to provide solid evidence for what they believe and good answers to unbelievers' questions and objections, then the perception of Christians would slowly change. Christians would be seen as thoughtful people to be taken seriously, rather than as emotional fanatics or buffoons. The gospel would be a real alternative for people to embrace. I'm not saying that people will become Christians because of the arguments and evidence. Rather, I'm saying that the arguments and evidence will help create a culture in which Christian belief is a reasonable thing. They create an environment in which people will be open to the gospel. So becoming trained in apologetics is one way, a vital way, of being salt and light in American culture today. So, that's part of the first chapter there. But like I said, very easy language. He speaks almost like, one-on-one with you. Nothing too crazy or intellectual yet, but
easy to read.
Easy to read, and it's a very breezy read too. He interjects with a lot of nice, because he's born right between mom and dad, so he's getting close to 80. I think he wrote this within the last 10 years or so. So he's been able to. He's been doing debates all through the 80s and 90s. I highly recommend watching them. He did one with Christopher Hitchens. It's 2.5 hours, but it's one of the most entertaining things to watch. He did one with Sam Harris, which that's a whole nother thing in and of itself. But that one's also entertaining in its own way. But because he has such a pedigree, he interjects all of this interesting anecdotal stuff into his books that are really fun to read. I've gone out. How much into apologetics have you gotten into? Have you Lee Strobel?
Yeah, I've read his stuff, Ravi Zacharias, which unfortunately
a little hard to bring up his name.
Didn't end well. Yeah.
But you can't discount the truth of someone's statements because of the quality of the character. I remember his most viral clip was someone who said because someone in a Q&A had asked, like, why do we need God to be moral? And his comeback was, like, awesome. It was really great. I know he would tour with Nabil Qureshi. Do you know who that is? Do you know who David Wood is?
I know the name.
Hey, he's back.
On my third jacket.
Tell me, Riley.
It's like that.
What's it right here? There's a lot of heat.
It's like that Pork and Beans Weezer video where they pull on like the 50 shirts.
Oh, I think I know what you're talking about. I'm very comfortable right now. That's good.
So,
scoot your chair up a little closer too. I actually scooted it back because I thought it was too close.
so I have to take like 3 steps back to say this story. So David Wood is I guess you would say evangelist in a way, but he also like in that like apologetics realm a little bit, but he is very much entrenched in like Muslim stuff. So he was on like a Muslim hotline show for a while where Muslims could call in and like chat with Christians. He had a super big YouTube channel that kept getting hit with censorship, so he literally just like gave the channel to some like Muslim convert to Christianity. Because he like, I think he might be on Rumble now, I don't know. But yeah, he was fed up with YouTube, so he gave his channel to someone else. It was called like Acts 17 Apologetics or something like that.
Oh yeah.
And he had a lot of great videos, especially around Muslim stuff, but his testimony video, which I don't know if it's still up on YouTube, that's another one I'll have to send to you. It's really great. Came like sociopath, and still is a sociopath, and like struggles to like feel emotion. But like almost killed his father. Just super angry guy, and I think I don't know if it was in prison or in some like rehabilitation place. He was roommates with someone who was a Christian. And he like took great pride in like knocking down this guy's arguments all the time. But this guy like came back in full force and like gave him these apologetics that he couldn't answer for. And he eventually became a Christian. Fast forward later, I think he's at some college and he is roommates with Nabil Qureshi, who was a Muslim. Brought him to Christ. And Nabil would tour with Ravi Zacharias a lot of the time.
Oh, okay.
And kind of give like the Muslim perspective. But Nabil tragically, I think, had cancer or something when he passed away. Like he was in his late 30s, early 40s.
Oh, wow.
And passed away maybe 2-3 years before Ravi did. Yeah, a lot of really interesting figures in the apologetics realm that have their own really interesting testimonies that are really cool to hear. Especially sociopaths who try to murder their father.
All right.
And then they just completely like flip on a dime and become like the most generous people. And he even said like, when Nabil died, like I didn't feel anything. Like I didn't feel any emotion. And he said there's only been like a couple times in my life where I felt like moved to tears. But aside from that, like he was at the funeral for it, like his lifelong friend of like 20 years. And just like didn't feel sad because he's a sociopath. Yeah, but he like fully accepts Christianity and all that. So really interesting insight from him as far as like not feeling the, because a lot of times in our culture, everyone feels so like swayed by the Holy Spirit and worship and all that. But for someone to be completely disconnected from that part of their life to still be like a outpouring Christian is very inspirational.
Do they look at Eskimo?
You do. It's cold.
Do you need a jacket at all?
I have a jacket.
What?
I'm wearing a jacket.
Like maybe another one or two.
Got another bunk unit.
I might grab a blanket.
Sometimes like if my legs get cold. What? My whole body's cold.
So it's 43 degrees.
It's not like 43. It's because of the wind. If there was no wind, I'd be.
Yeah, that is.
Yeah, the wind is making it feel like 39. It says. Here, I'll go.
You don't want it to catch on fire?
Come on, the Hunger Games?
As he throws it across the fire. What are we gonna do when it's like 25 degrees?
We're not gonna do it. That's the question.
That's sad.
That's the thing.
So that's why I need my smoking room
I know you gotta get on that.
to work.
How much would that cost to renovate that room?
I talked to Andrew about it. We kind of went back and forth, because the one opening between the dining room and the living room, it's like a 4-foot opening.
Yeah.
It's like, so would you put like a huge barn door there to try to block it, or would you just try to like run some decent air purifiers to where it's just not going to escape the room that much? Or I don't know.
Would you consider walling off one of the doors?
I mean, you could.
I don't know if you would want to, but that's something to think
That
about.
would be an option.
It would.
Or just wall it in to the point you could put a door in. Like a legit door.
Yeah. Really, just getting doors on is kind of the main thing, right?
Like the space between the kitchen and the dining room, I think that's a normal door opening.
Okay.
But then the opening from so we have the two living rooms. So the east living room, that door opening's smaller, so you could maybe put a barn door there that would just kind of slide over at least, But it's that other space, that opening's just really big. And it's nice that it's open because it makes the house feel very open.
Right.
But it doesn't lend itself well to containing cigar smoke.
Which if we're maybe smoking like towards the back of the room near the window, and there's like an air purifier running in there, it might be okay.
I mean, it's not going to just contaminate the entire house if we try it once.
Right. And that's the nice thing about these not being cigarettes is that they won't stick to anything.
Right.
They will dissipate.
Yeah.
They don't adhere to the walls or the ceiling at all.
Yeah.
It is just tobacco. The wind is blowing into the
I know,
cigar.
it blows it like right into your face as you're smoking.
Well, as I'm inhaling, the wind is contributing to it, so I'm getting like twice as much smoke in my mouth.
The other option would be the garage space where Riley's drums are at. We've actually cleared a bunch of that space out. We've hung all of our mountain bikes up from the ceiling now. And so we could conceivably create a space in there.
Yeah, when we were smoking at Dan's, like, we'd like maybe do one smoke as it got like colder, but like when it got cold enough, we'd be like, right, that's enough, we need to wait.
I was up there one night with him where it's just like I couldn't even feel my hands. Like you don't even want to touch your whiskey glass because it's so cold.
Yes, and he didn't have a fire pit or anything, so it was a little brutal. This definitely does help. Do you have music to share, Riley?
Not really. I couldn't find anything. I mean, I've just been listening to Radiohead recently.
I don't think I found much either. I think there was maybe one. Let me look.
I've been doing Foo Fighters when I work out.
Yeah.
I've got a Foo Fighters playlist it's got the right amount of energy to it. Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Anything could ever be this good again.
Peloton.
Ask of you.
I rarely catch a live class. Like you have to be just like have it scheduled and ready to go, and that's just not my life right now. But,
They have pre-recorded ones, right?
so they're pretty much all, a lot of them are pre-recorded, and they started that. What's the mom and dad are calling
That's what I do all the time, too.
But there's a couple of instructors, 2 dudes in particular, that they'll put together like a 15-minute like hit ride or a 15-minute climb. Like it's like a kind of a staged hill climb. So it gets like harder and harder, but when you're about to die, then it's done. But they'll do like 90s rock. So it'll be like, well, not this song. Although this could kind of escalate up to something, but there'll be like Foo Fighters, some other stuff. Then there'll be some like old stuff you haven't heard in 15 years. It's like, oh yeah, that song. But they curate it in such a way that they want the song to like crescendo, like when you're like
In the hard part of
in the hard part, and then all right, let's sit back down in the saddle, and then boom, and then it drops down to like the easy part. So there's a lot of thought that's put into like putting together a playlist for a spin run. So that's been kind of fun, and it's introduced me to some stuff one I haven't heard, or I never got into the band, and it's like, oh, that's kind of a cool song. And the cool thing is you can like, so I got the you can like it, and then it syncs to my Spotify. So I've got my liked Peloton songs.
Oh, so you can like the individual songs.
Yeah. So then you can go back, and based on that, then if you want to create a whole other playlist or something else, but so I'll like songs that it's like, that was interesting, and I think I could work out to that, or I'd want to listen to that again another time.
Sure.
Andrea ended up doing that from Peloton to create her hood playlist for her Aston Martin drives.
I like that. Hood playlist. Feels almost wrong
Right.
to play hood music out of the Aston Martin.
What would you play? I mean, we did she had the Vespa playlist, which was mostly songs from all the different Bond movies over the years. Some of them are good, some not so good. It was actually, we talked about this last time, that someone put that documentary together, the Sound of Bond. It was basically went through all the theme songs. And so some of those are on our playlist, but they're not always the best for like driving in a fast sports car.
No.
Because
A lot of them are very somber and slow.
slowly rise, and they're kind of somber, or like Billie Eilish, like, don't really want to drive a sports car to her, making her noises.
Right.
So,
Making her noises.
literally, that's what they had her do. Whatever the guy, John Williams, or whatever the guy that puts together all these orchestral, soundtracks. He's like, just make some different noises into the microphone, and they included that in the movie, and they didn't actually. So this is the last movie. They didn't actually get to like the themed music until like 3/4 of the way into it. Very well thought out, and you wouldn't even really notice it unless you watched the movie a couple times and someone pointed it out.
That's a first.
Yeah, it's very different.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. But long story short, it's her hood playlist is more designed for driving a sports car. Yeah.
Well, I have an option for a track. If you guys want to do it? You open for it? Mm-hmm. It's almost 6 minutes, 5 minutes, 53 seconds. So it's not like last time. I'll spare you. Here, I'll show it. I'll send it to you, Riley, so you can cue it up. I don't know if I shared this on the last playlist I sent to you. I feel like I had to have put some of his songs on the playlist, but
You guys pretty much using Spotify?
yeah. Christian and Travis were kind enough to let us glom onto their family plan,
Yeah.
so we can use Spotify Premium.
Nice.
No ads, which is really nice. I go back and forth between YouTube and like it depends on where I'm listening. If
Yeah.
I'm at home in the office, and it's like sometimes there's things that aren't on Spotify, so I'll listen on YouTube. And sometimes the YouTube recommended, if you're like listening to a certain genre, it'll recommend other stuff from the same genre on the side.
Yeah.
And I've discovered a lot of good bands through YouTube recommended.
Okay.
You seen it, Riley? Yeah. Don't play it yet. Did I put that on your playlist or any of his songs?
You did. I just didn't like them.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry.
Did I put that one?
I think so.
Okay.
They're just too long for me, and I don't know. I just don't like them.
That's fair. I can do a shorter one. You want me to do a shorter one that you maybe?
It doesn't matter.
Okay. So this is a guy, John Van Dusen, out of Washington, who is making, I think, some of the most intelligent, daring Christian music now.
Yeah.
Which I feel like most of the people making the best Christian music are like individual singer-songwriter kind of people who aren't beholden to Hillsong or Bethel or anything like that. That's like ready-made worship music with easy lyrics.
Right.
The thing I love about John's music is it's very introspective, but it's there's some musicians who might identify as Christian who I believe like their music is a little too doubtful, or they use like the Christian themes as like an avenue of like, this is why I fell away from the faith or something. So like it might sound like a Christian song or album, but it's like it kind of feels negative and gross. But what I love about John's music is that it's very raw and honest and emotional, but it's almost more like in this song, Marathon Days, is his attempt at talking about like how fast and crazy life has become and him wanting to like go back to like normal, simple things. So yeah, that's the whole premise of it. So if you want to play it, you can crank it up if you want. Since we're listening to it, we're going to do it.
I open my eyes deep in the night.
You start over?
Rolling thunder.
Sure. Thank you.
What's his full name?
John Van Dusen.
I'm stuck in a haze these
This is all the way up.
marathon days.
You want it all the way up?
Yeah, that's fine.
Over and over.
I think that's all the way up.
Okay.
I open my eyes
Sorry.
Okay.
deep in the night to cough rolling thunder. There's smoke on my tongue and I'm no longer young. I visit the river to cool off my mind under the Rhine. Sweet blueberry shivers. And I'm overanalyzing every bloody thing. King of nothing more than words that fail to bring meaning to my life. I could use a little cabin in the woods. Watch some birds and maybe smoke away the shoulds. Perhaps then I'll find some quiet. And no more car alarms, crowded subway cars, indoor cigarettes, pressure on my chest. No more mystery me, suicidal streets, sticky bathroom floors. And I miss the places that I know, the places that I go to be alone. And I miss the places that I know, the places that I go to be alone. I miss endless fields, early family meals, peaceful dusk and dawn, barefoot on the lawn, walking with my mom, coffee with my dad, sisters laugh at me, climb the cherry tree. And I miss the places that I know, the places that I go to be alone. And I miss the places that I know, the places that I go to be.
A lot of his music is much more of like a rocky. Listening to this part on the And that's just nature sounds. That's it.
The rest of the song.
Yeah. There's one other one. We don't have to listen to the whole thing, but I just want to like start it. Also on Spotify, it's called "May You Be Glorified." Try looking for that.
Is it the same album?
No, it's off of a little compilation called D-Sides, which is like these songs that he didn't know what to do with. If you can find "May You Be Glorified." This next one, like I said, we don't have to listen to the whole thing, but this is like a great example of what I wish worship music could sound like in churches, but I feel like most churches aren't brave enough to do this. It's like super simple, but has good lyrics, good melody.
Let me put it up here.
I just feel like I have to get...
Throne room. I want my life to be your garden. Want my heart to be your throne room. I want my life to be your garden. Lord, may the roots grow strong and deep.
Oh, this song has like a... What are those drums called that you sit on? I think so. Okay, it sounds like it as it goes on. That's cool.
Behind death's door.
but there is someone doing like a simple processive kind of music there. Here. Very like simple and
I think somebody's on. I think the snare drum head is pretty flat. Oh no.
It just sounded very like kind of low.
Kind of muted.
Yeah. Oh, I think it might be on a kit. It's just very muted. Because I can hear the hi-hat. Or maybe it's like, I don't know. It could be on its own.
I just wish more worship music sounded like this, rather than like climactic, anthemic, emotional stuff. It's something more like introspective and like.
John's talking about church, but I don't know what he's yet. I'm not asking to go in.
I've talked with him in the booth before, and he said basically like, if you're a fan of, if you're a fan of modern worship music, which I would not call myself one, nor would I. But you can change it if you want. But I want to bring attention to the people making. I wouldn't even call it worship music, but Christian music that's worth checking out.
Yeah.
So that's my contribution. I was gonna do, I think, his best song, but it's like 10 minutes long, so it has a lot of the epic crescendos like at the end of Marathon Days.
I guess it's still on the queue.
Is this Halo?
Yeah, I just put some Halo stuff on here. I was driving on the way to church and I was listening to this song because it just came up on my liked songs and it was so pleasant.
What's his name?
Marty O'Donnell.
Marty O'Donnell.
He makes some good stuff.
Who I think is like,
I saw the stick.
I think on Twitter, like he says some somewhat like conservative stuff, like politically. So he might be a legit guy. Great composer though.
Yes.
Also the idea of doing a Gregorian chant for a sci-fi thing was such a genius idea. Oh,
that's so cool.
It's moving.
It's cool. I got into Gregorian chant music in the 90s.
You did?
Yeah. It became a thing for a while.
Like as liturgical like worship stuff,
Like
or
there
just...
was someone that went in and like recorded them doing their thing, and then they put it to some different, added some background to it. But it was a thing for a while.
That's one like thing that's always been in like the far recesses of my mind is like I need to find like what the best Gregorian chant music is and like check it out and see if it's good.
Yeah.
Because after, so many of us being exposed to it through Halo, you're like, oh, that's actually kind of cool.
I mean, you might just Google it or YouTube it and see like Gregorian chant music 90s and see what pops up. It was like when, I don't know if you ever listened to Clannad. No. Oh shoot. The gal that came out of Clannad. Clannad just means like, it's like Scottish for family. And then
So was it like
Enya.
Did she do Chance?
No, but that all came out around the same time.
Okay.
That all became kind of popular. It was like not mainstream at all.
Right. I mean, Enya, was she Irish or
Probably
something like
Irish.
that? Because she did like really weird, definitely like other language
Yes.
stuff.
Yeah.
Her music.
Oh, look at the
Yeah.
leaves. Look at the leaves.
Yeah, that's cool.
Turning a black.
You guys should learn an Enya song for your band.
Oh, man.
It's like Orinoco Flow.
There you go. Orinoco Flow. That's what they're known for. But yeah, that's like right in the middle of like grunge and other stuff. Then you have that stuff show up.
Yeah.
And people really got into it.
Yeah.
Very different.
And I know that,
Well, something was wrong.
I don't know if it was the plays or the sales, something like that, but basically the popularity of Only Time
Yeah.
skyrocketed after 9/11. Like people definitely like sought more introspective, calmer,
Yeah.
kind of comforting sounding music after 9/11.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, like, how do I put this? I don't love Enya, but like I dig like that like calm new age ambient sound. There's something very comforting about it.
Yeah. If it's, the right situation and you're drinking a cup of tea
That's
and
that.
Put on Only Time.
that's right. That's cool.
I do think that this second cigar is preferred to the first.
It smokes slower,
It has a better flavor.
better flavor. First one was fairly simple.
Did I ask you, do you have a track to share, Riley?
Oh no, I just mentioned I was listening to
Oh, yeah,
Radiohead.
radio.
But I mean, I don't know, I could play Echo if you want me to. I like,
Do you have a weird random track from your past that you remember? Just something weird. You said, what was the name of Canted, you said?
Clannad.
Clannad. Should we try to search for that?
For Clannad and maybe pick one of their top songs.
how do you spell that?
Did you say it was Scottish?
It's probably Irish. It's
Clannad?
If you get Clannad,
It's like clan and then
like
mad.
Clannad means like a clan, like a family. Thing is, if you get the Irish and the Scottish thing mixed up, no bueno.
No bueno.
It's like Mike Myers.
That's right.
Everything's Scottish. If it's not Scottish, it's crap.
Did you find it? Here, show him the album artwork. This will look familiar.
It's just a.
That's it? Okay.
Clannad.
What year is this, did it say?
1983.
83?
Wow. So it came back later. Because this
It had a renaissance?
This was big in the 90s.
This sounds like Lord of the Rings soundtrack.
Yeah.
This does feel very, very like Celtic.
Yeah. Say very, very much cool.
Which I found that I like that sound. I don't like it when it's mixed with other genres. Because I ended up reacting to that first Cranberries album. There were some tracks that were like rockier with the Celtic aspect. I didn't like those as much. Interesting. They kind of clashed a little.
Yeah.
But I do like this vibe. It feels very, I wouldn't say like nature. It's like, it has a fantasy feel to it.
Yeah.
I like it.
Andy says hi, by the way. I'm in a group chat with him right now. He's like, why are you not playing, like, whatever, like, Overwatch with me?
You're like, I'm listening to Celtic chant music.
And I'm
Shut
like,
up.
I'm hanging out with, single dude.
I feel like, gosh, what's his name? Howard it's just right there for the taking. You know?
Sorry.
Whoa.
Thank you for that. That's nice. I grew up with something different. I grew up with Mom playing some Celtic instrumental CD. I don't know where she got it. Off of eBay or something. I don't know why she had it.
Yeah.
But it was like really weird, like it wasn't like soft or ambient stuff like that. It was the weird like driving, maybe there was a bit of bagpipes in there or something. Just a little cheesy. But I remember liking it as a kid.
Under the counter or under the cabinet CD player.
Just had a weird Celtic instrumental CD that she would play every now and then. So Riley, what did you say were your favorite tracks from Rainbow?
I actually only had a couple. It's Weird Fishes and then Jigsaw.
Jigsaw's so good.
Yeah.
Such a good song.
That's
What do you like off of the second disc, the B-side stuff?
Down is the New Up and Go Slowly.
Go Slowly is so good. Have you listened to Last Flowers?
No.
That's a weird one. That's a piano one, but it's really weird.
I'll put on the queue.
So I was really into Parachutes and In Rainbows at like the same time, and they're still like my first and second favorite albums. But I would fall asleep to them, and falling asleep to this song Last Flowers was really weird because it's a kind of a dissonant song, but man, Parachutes is such a good album to fall asleep to. At the time, I was hanging out a lot with Christy and Travis, and they would play a lot of like the stuff that Travis grew up liked and stuff that Christy liked. So it was a lot of Red Hot Chili Peppers, Sublime, and then a lot of like punk stuff. So a lot of like skate punk and like Bad Religion, stuff like that, Unwritten Law, and like nothing against those bands, but like they were, because like I hung out with them so much and I was like viewing them as role models, I was listening to that music too, and it was making me like angry, and then I had this moment of like, I'm not angry about anything, it's just this music that's making me feel angsty about nothing. And so I felt like I needed like a complete like rinse from it, and at the time I had like discovered Parachutes and was getting into Radiohead, and so like I had like shed all of that stuff that they were listening to and had like a detox with Parachutes and Rainbows, and it was just like brought me back down to earth a little bit. Nice. And it was kind of like as I was getting into music, so like those two albums are like super important to me because they like were not only when I was getting into music, but like sort of helped define my personality.
Which albums? It was Sleep with
Parachutes. In Rainbows.
Yeah, make some smoke. Kind of fun though.
Just sit back and listen.
You see what I mean by this is a weird one? It's cold, huh?
Music's powerful though. I mean, I went through a spell where I was listening to, a lot of grunge
if you take me,
and there's, I mean, you read the lyrics, it's like some of it's really well thought out. Some of it doesn't make any sense at all. But
Yeah, some of it you can tell was written on a little bit of a, which is fine.
Yeah.
I mean,
but it can get to you after a while.
As someone who has now had, THC gummies, Delta-8 gummies, and someone who's been creative,
Yeah.
I can say like it unlocks like aspects of the creative process that like I wouldn't say feel inaccessible, but just harder to reach without its effects, I should say.
You and Joe Rogan.
Me and Joe Rogan. But the thing is, I always microdose.
Yeah.
Which, for those who don't know, microdosing is just basically having enough of the THC or the Delta-8, whatever it is, before you feel that, like, the euphoria. Which I've got to say, like, as someone who has a mild form of OCD, like when I pop like half a Delta-8 gummy in the morning, like for the whole day, I'll just feel like almost like this fog has been kind of lifted and I'm more like in tune with reality a little bit. And so like I definitely get the advantages of stuff like that. But yeah, if you're like just high all the time, you're going to be making weird stuff. So a lot of the psychedelic stuff, like Beatles' Revolver and Sgt. Pepper's, it's a Magical Mystery Tour, all that. It's weird often, but it's also some of the most like genius stuff ever made.
It's probably opening areas in the mind and psyche or who knows what.
Yeah, you're able to like. Have you taken much THC or Delta-8 or anything like that?
So never.
Never?
And not necessarily out of a moral conviction or anything, but just haven't ventured into that yet.
So for a long time I got CBD through Johnny Apple CBD. And I used Gavin McInnes's discount code, Gavin, to get like a discount. But they carry Delta-8, which is legal. And I found, because I took some of the THC gummies that like Connie would give Mom and whatnot, which are a little more intense and kind of spiky, I would say. Delta-8 much smoother, I find, a little more subdued. But I'd be interested to see how you would feel taking a little bit of Delta-8. Like I said, microdosing. So that like it's just, you're getting just kind of the fringe effects.
I would want to try that.
It's I don't want to say life-changing, but like once I started like, taking it maybe like 4 or 5 days out of the week, because some days it can kind of, I wouldn't say ruin your focus, but make things feel a little too easygoing, and then you're not super present for when you should be. So if it's a day when, you're like a weekend or whatever, you just want to kind of like coast through the day, microdose a little bit of that stuff, it just, for me at least, because of my OCD, clears a little bit of the fog and makes me feel a little more in tune with the world. I can access joy easier. I actually feel like I'm able to interact with the Holy Spirit a little bit better too. Like my prayers feel a little more fulfilling.
I think what's kept me from it is just hearing other people's experiences of like, oh, I went to Vegas and had like a third of a gummy and then tripped for 8 hours and was paranoid and stayed in my hotel room and
that's just way too much.
Thought that the mafia was coming for me. And
That's
like,
too much.
That sounds like 8 hours of hell. Like, I don't want to do that.
So
and who knows what they got?
Right. They could have been like, and some of those gummies are really potent. But
dangerously potent. If you've got kids around.
Yes.
But then I know other people that are like, when we have friends over, it's like if I just do like a half a gummy, like I'm not as socially anxious and like I can actually chill and have good conversation. And
that's been my experience with it. So I would say if you ever do are interested in it, I can give you like the Johnny Apple website.
I'd be interested in like, what you've described sounds
much more palatable.
Yes.
And I think it's mostly just body weight, like different, like how big you are, how much you can handle.
Right. Your general metabolism, how fast do you metabolize substances?
Isn't that because if you have more body weight, like I saw this test of like people like drinking like alcohol and stuff, and like somebody who's higher body weight, so he's like a pretty big guy, does better.
Yes.
Like smaller people, like women.
It seemed to have been the same with THC. THC as well.
Yeah. And I would not. It'd be kind of cool to try that and see what my mind comes up with.
Yeah, I mean, I take, how much do you weigh?
I'm working towards 190 increment.
Oh, shit.
I don't know, probably 190 somewhere. I haven't weighed myself.
I'm probably still north of 200, maybe.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, I got a little bit of
How tall are you?
6'4".
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so
every foot over 6 feet is 10 pounds. I'm sorry, every inch over 6 feet.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
How
6 feet.
6'1"?
I'm 6.
Okay. I found that I don't remember the milligrams, I think it's 10, no, it's 20. 20 milligrams of Delta-8 in the gummies I take half. And that's good for the whole day.
For the whole day?
For at least 10 hours. Yeah, I take it maybe 8 or 9 and then it fades away by 4 to 5.
Okay.
And I get 2 bottles of, I think, 30 for like $6. Yeah, so that lasts me for
It's like stupid
120 days,
Yeah.
and I don't take it every day.
Iffy, yeah.
Yeah, Haley takes like a quarter,
Yeah.
and that kind of helps her a little bit too.
Yeah.
But I'd love to hear how it fares for you, because I'd probably imagine like half a gummy would also probably do the similar thing for you.
Probably.
Because when I took the ones from Connie, there was one day where I decided like, oh, I'll take half of this THC one, and I'm like, oh, that's it. I'm actually high.
Yeah.
Thankfully, no one was home.
Didn't have to go pick someone up from school.
I didn't have any responsibilities,
Yeah.
and I was actually frustrated
Yeah.
because I was sitting there, I was watching YouTube videos that I knew weren't funny, but I was laughing at them,
Yeah.
and I'm like, I feel a little not out of control, but like I'm interacting with the world in a way that I normally wouldn't,
Right.
and like I can't control what I find funny,
Yeah.
and so like if you want to get like that high, like no responsibilities, do it with like your significant other, and like, you know, do it into the evening
It's a
as you go
weekend, you're not taking care of a child.
as
or
you're going, like do it into the evening as you're going to sleep. That's like my recommendation for that kind of a situation.
Because another experience I had around that was I had a roommate that decided he was just going to smoke weed all day, every day.
All the time.
And I was working like 6 to 3s, so I'd have to get to bed at like 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night at the latest.
Right.
It'd be like 12 or 1 in the morning, and I'd hear this laughing from the living room. I'd go out there and him and
Watching Beavis and Butthead.
that and Ren and Stimpy. Granted, funny, but not that funny. You know, but just can't seem to keep a job, but somehow is always in the weed and smelled like poop all the time. And I'm not an advocate for smoking pot.
No.
What it does to the lungs and the brain and everything
Anything
else.
going into the lungs, I'm not into.
Yeah, that's just not good.
So after that situation, I realized like, okay, I need to dial it back and then dial it slowly up to see where that line is for me.
Yeah.
And I found my line, and
Yeah,
it's been really nice.
the anxiety kind of melts away, the obsessive part of life kind of mellows out, and
Yes.
you can be creative and get through your day and still be functional.
Yes, it's actually been, I would say, a huge blessing. And I'm one of those people who feel like, you know, this is something that it's part of nature, that was created by God, and
Christians struggle with that.
they do, with substances, because we're in a fallen nature, we can get addicted to anything.
Yep.
So I don't feel like I have a chemical addiction to really much at all. Maybe sugar, probably salt, as everyone does.
Yeah, sugar's the most addictive. It's as addictive as cocaine and heroin. But we tend to want to gloss over that in the Christian church.
I'm thankful that my sweet tooth has largely evaporated.
Yeah,
I still enjoy a good Reese's every now and then, but
likewise. But if I do carnivore, like just meat sticks and mostly meat, some cheese and stuff, like
it's hard to go back to the crazy sugar.
Ooh. It's, during the holidays sometimes, but even then it's like you eat it and you're like, whoa, the sugar, and then you kind of crash, and then then you get hungry again because your blood sugar dropped because it crashed.
Yes.
That's just no fun.
I don't like it.
But that whole up and down cycle of blood sugar and carbs, that's where it's so addictive.
Which I will say, I've gotten the munchies a little bit here and there as it's happened.
Still don't understand that.
I don't. Yeah,
What is that?
That is a weird phenomenon, but it's like it's not that you're hungry. It's like it really is kind of a craving thing where you're like, ooh, that sounds good, and then you eat it, and it's super flavorful, almost like you had one of those like miracle berry things, and it's just like there's almost more flavor to it. I've never, because I regulate it, I've never like just chowed down on a bunch of stuff, which for those guys who smoke weed all the time, you'd think that they'd be like super fat.
They rarely are.
They're really not. I don't know what that's all about.
It's probably the only meal they have ever.
Well, and
They can't afford anything else.
based on experience with roommates, I would say regular healthy meals was not happening. It was like they wouldn't eat all day. Then all of a sudden I did like, we need to make something super random that they were creating, like spaghetti or something. So they make a huge bowl of spaghetti and eat it with their friends. But throughout the day, they're not really eating anything at all. So it's not so much like too much calorie intake. It's almost like it's like a one big meal a day based on munchies.
And I can see this is where the disconnect comes in, because like intellectually I can see the appeal to that kind of like lifestyle, because once you've felt the effects of that type of thing, then you're like, because it's so like freeing, I could see someone of a lesser constitution dipping into it, and it not in the way that like, heroin would ruin or meth would ruin you, but you're just like, I wouldn't want anything else. And that's just a mark of a ill-developed and weak life.
Yeah.
But because it's like, I have kids, I have a wife, I have all of these facets of my life and lifestyle and beliefs that I hold strongly to, this thing wouldn't derail me.
Right.
Whereas like younger people, like I would not recommend, which Riley, you'd probably be an exception, honestly, but like anyone under the age of like 20 to 25, if you don't have like a good work ethic or life ethic, I would not recommend dipping into that kind of
It's almost a way to escape responsibility of growing up.
Yes.
Because that's, again, and I think for me, I kind of have to overcome past experiences and stereotypes to think that, there could be a utility there outside of just being a pothead.
Utility is a good word, because I feel like utility and lifestyle are two different ends of that spectrum.
Yeah.
It's same with like alcohol. Like we're using it in like a utility of it tastes good.
Yeah.
We drink it in moderation. We like what it does to us.
Sipping it with a cigar over 4 hours.
Yes, but we're not, going on benders.
Yeah, we don't start our mornings off with something to cure whatever you drank the night before.
Exactly.
And I knew people that did that too.
Right. And that's just like we talked about, that's a problem that's farther back down the line. And I don't have that problem. I don't think you guys have that problem. So I feel safe being like, try Delta-8. You might like it.
So thoughts on psychedelics? Because now in Colorado, psilocybin and others are decriminalized. I don't know if you saw that. It was on the ballot. So it's interesting. Coloradans voted down wine in grocery stores and delivery food with delivery beverages. But we voted yes for psychedelic mushrooms.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't looked to see how all of the
There must have been a
Colorado things work.
fairly strong lobby for liquor stores not wanting grocery stores to be able to sell wine at just strictly competition. Because it'd be convenient to go to the store and grab a couple steaks and then, I'm going to grab a bottle of Albarino or something and take it home for dinner instead of having to go over to the liquor store. But and this psilocybin, like I've read some research on it. Dr. Mercola talks about it as looks like fairly effective treatment for major depression as well as PTSD, in particular, military.
Yeah, I
post-military.
got a bunch of ads for the veteran stuff.
Did you?
On YouTube. Did you get that too?
Yeah.
It's I almost had them memorized at one point where it was like, veterans need access to this breakthrough treatment.
That's interesting. So I'm on YouTube. It's mostly Dave Pilates. And I didn't see any of those.
Really?
Although I've seen a couple that are like, I don't think Dave Pilates would approve of this ad on his thing. It was mostly like anti-Lauren Boebert or whatever.
Sure.
She voted no on all the veterans things. She hates veterans and whatever. Because she didn't vote for an omnibus bill that had a little teeny thing for veterans and the rest of it was pork. But neither here nor there.
Right.
But I didn't see any of the psychedelic mushroom stuff.
Really?
Yeah. Which is interesting because, I'd have to think back on how YouTube targets ads. Is it based on you demographically, or is it on what you're viewing?
I don't know.
So Facebook's got their audience dialed in really good, but Facebook's also like, you're a member. They track everything you look at, everything you do, whereas YouTube's a little different. It's basically just kind of what you're viewing and what maybe you've put into your Google profile as far as, date of birth and not much else. Like, what does YouTube really know about you?
So, what I was saying, what I last know about YouTube recommended is
Right, Monte Cristo it is.
Monte Cristo. The YouTube recommended is, it's not like it's looking at, okay, you're watching a video that has these tags on it. So we'll recommend other things that are similar to these tags. What it will do is it will recommend other stuff that is being watched by people who are watching the video you watched. So rather than relying on just like raw data, it will rely on other users. So like if you're like,
oh, interesting.
Yeah, so like what I was talking about, like with music, like I'm gonna check out this this Dream Pop album, and it's like, oh, here's a bunch of other Dream Pop albums that are being listened or being watched by people who are watching the album you're listening to right now. That, as last I knew, that's how the YouTube recommended works. I don't know if that applies to ads. I don't know how they work on the ad.
Yeah, and I think you're right that those are two separate things, not exclusively separate, but
right.
There was the individual Joe Rogan interviewed when Andrew and I were stranded in Mexico due to a particular positive test. And so I watched 5 or more Joe Rogan episodes, one with Jordan Peterson, phenomenal, probably one of the best ones he's ever done.
Is that the most recent one that he was on?
This would have been
There was one
months
where
ago.
there was one where he started and it was talking about like the climate change stuff.
Man, they talked about everything. This is one of the. I think it was almost 4 hours.
I remember the last. I think it's the most recent Jordan Peterson appearance.
Okay.
I watched that one as well, and it was very good.
So this was around the time that. So this would have been early spring. That's when Andrea actually ran a school board meeting from Mexico over Zoom.
Wow.
And they voted for free to choose unmasking the kids. And we did that from a resort room in Mexico.
Wow.
That was wild. Yeah. She could have gone home. I had to stay. And she opted to go ahead and stay with me.
That's fair.
I couldn't leave my room. She could. It was so real.
Wow.
Anyway. there's another episode where he interviews a gentleman that does research out of a university, and he is looking at how YouTube does what YouTube does. And he found that between Facebook and YouTube, they could basically curate what you see in such a way to predict your voting patterns and influence your voting patterns. And even further, and he created it was almost like they hijacked a bunch of stuff off of YouTube and created like a fake YouTube. But then had college students get on a computer and watch YouTube, and then they would kind of curate certain videos for them to see. And they were able to, through that, get them to vote for a certain candidate, which is really wild. Joe Rogan was like floored. He's like, no. He's like, oh no, we've got all the data to support it. Did it in a university setting. I can't remember the guy's name.
I want to look. I'm looking this up now because I might have watched the exact same.
And he said, get off of Google and get on Brave as far as the browser. He's like, do it right now.
Yeah. When was this?
February, March 2021. 2021. No, I'm sorry, 2022. What year are we? The last 2 years have been the longest years of our
2022, the year of our Lord and Savior.
I would know his name if I heard it. Really, really interesting.
Oh, Douglas Murray, I love those episodes. You watch any of the Douglas Murray ones?
You see?
Gay guy from England who likes Christianity as an idea.
I don't think so.
No? He's super entertaining to watch.
I scroll
he does some
through
great Joe Rogan
anything that's like
episodes.
stand-up comedian and MMA fighter. I usually scroll past, and some of those could be super interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have 3 hours to commit to that.
Yeah, not worth it for me.
He had Dr. Phil on recently.
Yeah, I saw that.
That was decent.
I did not watch that one though. Okay. Who? Robert Epstein?
Gosh, that sounds right. What does it say about him? Does it say anything?
Is that him?
Positive that's it.
Yep. That
Very interesting.
his wife maybe assassinated by someone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds like conspiracy theory. He tells the whole story. I'm like,
Crazy episode.
yeah.
Yeah.
Why?
Thankfully, all of the like recommendations he gave, like I was already doing. Like, because I had switched to Brave maybe a year and a half ago.
So you're like a trendsetter.
No. Because I saw
I was like DuckDuckGo, and then come to find out they're no better.
they're
better, but not
They
much
were okay, and then there was one tweet that I think it was the CEO posted, where everyone basically like switched, and that everyone who was a DuckDuckGo fan became not a DuckDuckGo fan because of that tweet. And it was something along the lines of, "We're going to curate for disinformation,"
Yep.
and they were like no, like I want a search engine, not a publisher.
And they basically all plug into Google, and whatever Google does, they do to a certain extent.
And it was really interesting to hear Robert Epstein talk about like how search engines crawl,
Yes.
and how like DuckDuckGo, like which engines are crawling for information, and how it sounds like the Brave search engine is not based on Google,
Yep.
which I think is really interesting. And that's the one I use now.
I think it's the only one that's disconnected from Google.
Yeah. And so I was using Brave with DuckDuckGo as the engine.
Yeah.
And now I'm Brave with just Brave as the search engine too.
And it's nice with Brave. You could also turn on their VPN if you want, so then you're completely anonymized.
I do have NordVPN.
Do you?
I actually am an affiliate, and I have my link in my YouTube description.
Good idea.
They reached out to me and they're like, "Hey," because I was
Yeah.
successful enough on YouTube, and they're like, "You want to be an affiliate?" I'm like,
I love affiliateships. Makes complete sense.
and like I've already been, and it makes it easy to push the product when you've already been using it for a while.
So we're using Covenant Eyes, which is more for like blocking stuff on the internet. but it does it through a VPN.
Really?
Yes, which is kind of nice. So all of our devices are on that VPN, and then it just blocks stuff, and then I get a report every day of basically random screen captures from everyone's devices. So every day I've committed to it. I'm going to go through the entire email and look at all the screen captures and what everyone searched. And it's interesting because sometimes on my device it'll say this was blocked and that was blocked. I'm like, I didn't do that.
Riley, you can't keep looking at big boot videos.
Dang it.
But it's like specifically on my phone.
Yeah?
Isn't that weird? So I don't know if it's like something in an email that's trying to then like crawl out and do something.
Right.
Don't know. But it's weird random stuff.
Interesting.
Yeah. But it's kind of nice to know that we're behind a VPN wall.
I'm not behind it all the time because I don't know if you guys have run into this, but
Yes.
it seems like some websites think you're some kind of weird evil warlord when you go to their website and they're like, your IP is blocked. I'm like, oh.
Or Riley texts me, he's like, Dad, like, what's the login to Amazon? This is weird. And he like screen captures it to me. It's like Amazon Australia. I'm like, yeah.
It's like,
why.
It thinks you're in Singapore. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
It thinks our account has been compromised.
Log out of the VPN.
When there's some websites where I've had to like, because I don't know how it is with your service, but with Nord, there's a ton of different servers you can pick from. And so, like, there are a couple websites that I use that are really finicky, where like you go to it when you're on the VPN and it just gives you a screen that's like your IP is blocked because of whatever reason. And so I'll have to go through and find a server that hasn't had weird interactions with that website, and then I'll just use that server.
So when we were in Germany, we tried to watch Valkyrie. Couldn't watch it. I'm like, oh, conspiracy theory waiting to happen here. But there are just certain shows and programs that aren't available in every country.
Yes.
Wasn't necessarily because we're in Germany.
Same thing with YouTube. There are particularly British. Like if it's a British band, not usually the big ones, like more obscure European bands, you can't find their music on YouTube unless you VPN through like a UK server.
Through a UK server.
And then you can find their stuff on YouTube.
Yeah. Well, even like TikTok. What we see on TikTok here, if you go to China and look at TikTok,
Very different.
There's no twerking on TikTok in China.
Sure.
It's a totally different. What you're fed is totally different.
Mm-hmm.
And so that makes sense. But this guy, I mean, it was, you know, what he was saying, the stuff they were tracking and watching, and what was basically curated and like what to view next, and how it kind of varied from person to person. And then when they like forcibly did it and then surveyed the students to see where they stood on issues and who they'd vote for, it's like, so a platform could literally change an election.
Through
That's
a
good.
bunch of smaller ancillary means.
Which is super hard to track and prove.
Yes.
Like, imagine trying to go before Congress and like prove that with all these people that are like boomers that have no idea what you're talking about.
That's the hard part. Like, do you remember that? I don't know what it was, but like Zuckerberg before Congress or the Senate. Do you remember that?
I've seen a few.
I've seen a few.
All the memes and stuff.
And well, it's mostly like because it's people, it's older Republicans who kind of understand these concepts, trying to like bring it to Zuckerberg as like, you know, like these things seem to be happening.
Yeah.
Can you explain yourself? And then he gives like a legitimate technical explanation, and they're just confused.
They're confused.
And like you're just talking past each other, and nothing is actually happening here.
It's like when your elections are handled on machines that have proprietary secret software that no one understands, and you can't open the machine because then you violated the whatever. It's like the machines could be squeaky clean, but it's like if you don't even understand how it works and what it does, it seems like it's gotten too complicated now.
I think we're in this really weird, and I talk about this all the time, the advent of the internet and modern technology and social media is unprecedented in humankind, and
It's moved really fast.
it's had much more impact on the world than people think. We're in this weird, awkward transition of people who were still alive in the 30s and 40s that are in positions of power because they've come to that point in their career, who are just completely ignorant as to these modern ways. And I can only like hope and pray that we come out of it clean on the other side, because through all the confusion, a lot of corruption can pass through. So
When you realize that Zuckerberg could place the get out the vote, you see it on Facebook, right? Get out the vote. You know, make sure that if they maybe push that a little bit more heavily towards Democrats, you could literally change an election. How would you know that? How would you prove that? You can't get into the algorithm unless it's under subpoena through a congressional, committee or something. But
thank the Lord that Twitter has gone private.
it's like, wow.
Like that's one, like, for all of the goods or bads of Elon Musk, like the fact that money was able to take this thing kind of offline, so to speak, and get it under control and under scrutiny.
Thankful for libertarian billionaires.
And
And honestly, you know what the motivating factor was? He was pissed that Babylon Bee was
that was the thing.
That was it.
That was the thing.
Isn't that wild?
And it's still locked, actually, which is really funny. But like, that's happening. Facebook laid off 11,000 employees. It's like
Twitter had 7,500. About half of those are gone.
board of directors gone.
CEO's gone.
There's hope. There's like Google is still the giant that seems impenetrable. And I remember after listening to that Robert Epstein episode, being like, okay, I'm mostly good, but I still have a Google Mini Nest in my house, connected to our Wi-Fi.
I have a Google business profile, and I have 250 plus 5-star reviews. Do I want to just give that up? I mean, that brings in new patients for my clinic. And I like the idea of a review system that's not associated with some sort of regulatory agency. Because we've got DORA, Department of Reg Agencies, that supposedly protects the public from bad chiropractors, and I get to pay into that every year to protect the public, which is ridiculous. Which does not protect the public, by the way. It just pays bureaucracies. But then you've got Google, kind of a private company, now public, that allows for that voluntarily. And if I'm a bad actor, I'm going to get all the bad reviews, I'll be done. So I like the idea of almost like a Better Business Bureau, that like we can almost self-regulate through private entities. We don't need to be regulated by the government. But Google's so big now, like they might as well just go ahead and be a hand of the government, because they kind of are. Same thing with Facebook, which, we get these leaked documents that the DOJ has been working with Facebook and other agencies to like, hey, we're going to go ahead and have you share data and, questionable misinformation with us, and then we're going to report back to you and let you know what you should be taking down. They leaked 3 weeks ago? That's not okay.
No.
We've got this thing called a First Amendment and freedom of speech.
It's, all morality aside, I find it super interesting to see power and evil interact with each other, and to see this has been something we've talked about a lot, especially with the missing 411 stuff. It's like, how much does the government, are they involved in that kind of stuff? How much do they know about supernatural aspects of the world? Watching the dynamic between nefarious actors seeking power and Google rising up and becoming entrenched in this kind of stuff, it's really fascinating to see how that all functions.
Yes. And it's a new world. I mean, this is all uncharted territory.
Exactly.
And how long is it going to stay uncharted? And I'm not a huge fan of like regulating a bunch of stuff. You know, is it just a platform where all speech is welcome and hopefully the best speech wins out? Well, obviously that's not the case anymore, because now there's suppression of speech, there's censorship, and so then how does the censorship skew? That's now the concern, because it's pretty obvious it skews in a certain way, where, you know, Elon Musk takes over Twitter and instantly individuals on the right gain 10 to 20,000 followers overnight. So are all those requests to follow like suppressed, and then all of a sudden like they're being, obviously Elon didn't go in there and like hit a bunch of buttons, so it's like, what's going on there? It's just like the wild west of the technology world. I don't know.
Talking about the interaction between power and evil, when you say like things obviously skew a certain way, it's like, yeah, within power, things are going to skew away from toward like a personal morality, because like that's the whole differentiating thing between like God and sin. Is like God is love, intimacy, unity, and the evil perversion of that is pride and focus on the self. So when it comes to like, the things that we want, the things that are progressive, the things that, we're able to make our own rules, that's the stuff that flirts with power.
Right.
So, and like just today I was going through, because I had gone through all of the New Testament, re-listening through Old Testament again.
Yes.
I'm in Exodus now. And we had talked a bit about how, like, last time, about how maybe some of these older cultures, these Gentile cultures in the Old Testament, were either maybe seduced or intimidated by nefarious entities of supernatural bents. And that might make sense of some, like, reasons why they were worshiping ardently. It's not just like, we hate God, we're going to do this. It's like, maybe there was like a reason that they
saw some
injuring themselves or sacrificing their children. And especially in Exodus, like reading like the magicians who were also able to turn their staffs into serpents.
How did they do that?
And
they were able to replicate several of the plays.
Yes.
How did they do that?
Which is super funny, because when they got to the gnats, they were able to make water to blood, something else, frogs appear, but when the gnats showed up, the magicians were like, we can't do it.
We got nothing.
We got nothing on the gnats.
Nothing on the gnats. Can't control them. Sorry.
But I was just talking to Haley about this morning, is the interesting thing of us as Christians, when we read the Old Testament, we glom onto like the patriarchs and the Israelites. It's like Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph, Moses, all that. We never put ourselves in the shoes of the Gentiles. Like, why were the Egyptians acting the way they were? Like, the Pharaoh hardening his heart over and over at these things. And it's like, from our perspective, like, why aren't you, like, changing your mind? Like, obviously God is, like, showing you that he's in control. It's like, well, maybe it's because he has interacted with the supernatural in a nefarious way, and he thinks, because a lot of the Old Testament,
He has like his own God or something.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like the Old Testament seems to be like people grappling with God's authority.
Yeah.
So it's like, I have a God, you have a God.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that makes like way more sense to me than just like, I don't like God.
And even in the sense, or in the face of the God of the Bible showing his authority and power, they still questioned it and or pushed against it. It's like, if you're just like worshiping a little like golden cow or something in your living room, like, seriously?
Right.
And then you see like the power of the God of the Bible.
Right.
But maybe they saw some supernatural power too, like Moloch.
Yes.
Like, would you sacrifice your baby to like something you've never seen? And it's just this
for no good
carving
reason.
image? For no good reason.
Yeah. And I love that because I'm right in the midst of all the plagues.
Yeah.
I love that because like it seems like like Pharaoh is like, oh, my magicians can do that. Why is this special?
Yeah.
And literally it gets down to the point of like the boils, and then magicians are basically calling in sick where they're like, dude, we can't come in to like do any more magic tricks for you because we have boils.
Yeah.
We can't be here.
Not only can we not cure ourselves. Yeah.
So it's like God has to like, the more you try to play God, the more God will like push you down to, you know, agree to the dust that you are. And so it was after you had talked about the passage from Demons that you had read, and thinking about that in our conversation, then going through Exodus now, I'm like, wow, this is a whole aspect that I didn't even consider could be possible.
And most people don't, and I think a lot of Christians don't want to, which is a little concerning. I mean, Paul says we, you know, live in an age where we don't wrestle against flesh and blood, but principalities and powers of the air. He's not talking about angels and demons necessarily. He's talking about all the rest of it too. And when God's divine counsel is basically put out over all the nations after the Tower of Babel, it's like, what were they doing? And all of a sudden, all these nations kind of go bad and go rogue. I think there was a power play, and these beings wanted power. I mean, it's kind of the curse of mankind, is the struggle for power. And like you said, when you think about, you know, freedom versus force. Freedom is, I would say, the Republican platform. It's like, yeah, people need to be free to choose, free to live their lives. We have God-given rights. But then there's others that have this ideal, which oftentimes is absent of God, that we can create our own utopia, but it's always through force. And I think there's a supernatural entity out there that, same thing, it's like, God is this, but we want this, but it has to be done through force.
And I think the force aspect of it is because there's like a very deep intrinsic natural function to the world, and when you fight against it, it's an uphill battle.
Yes.
And so I think that's where the force kind of comes in, because it really is like you're climbing Mount Olympus to become your own god.
Yeah.
It's not going to work.
It's not going to work, but they're sure as hell going to try.
Mm-hmm. Perfect place to wrap it.
Dang.
There we go.
Yeah. Beautiful. Good stuff.
Keep picking up a little weed here. Oliver threw all the leaves in there. Little greenery. Perfect. It's fun when you're a kid to throw stuff on fire.
There was one time at Mom and Dad's where City was able to throw some ice on their fire pit, and every time we had the fire pit, Mom and Dad's now, she's like, can I throw some ice on it? I'm like,
Nice.
no, it's cute. Riley, you missed On Guard.
Oh wow.
You
Apologetics.
have to watch that part of the video, dude.
It's good.
Easy read. I mean,
I'm just gonna, next time we do this, I'm just gonna pick up from where I left off.
Yeah.
We'll just read more.
yeah, I have nothing different or new to add.
Look, there's a diagram. That means
wow.
it's smart and scientific.
Like, I love Michael Heiser, but trying to read his books, like even Angels, it's like, oh my gosh, like I have to just sit here and listen to every word you say, and even then it's like super technical,
Does
lots
he,
of words.
Does he like assume that you kind of, or does he like give you some traction to follow?
Can't help himself.
He can't help himself, he just dives in.
So he did Unseen Realm, which is like mostly footnotes.
Mm-hmm.
And then he realized like he just lost everybody. So then he did Supernatural, which is like a tamed down version. Good book.
Yeah.
Unseen Realm, really good book. but like, man, like we listen to it when we are riding in our car, and Andrew's got the book open. Like, you can't have any distractions, otherwise, completely lost. 30 minutes goes by. What did I listen to?
That's how C.S. Lewis is sometimes too. Like the really heady people who just
Super
like
heady.
they put like 50 points into one sentence, and you're like,
What did he just say?
I need to like go back and read that later.
I found Demons was a little lighter. It seems weird. But Angels, like I just about finished it. I had like maybe 30 minutes to go. But really good. But at the same time, it's like, dang, like I couldn't imagine just like reading the book page by page, like listening to it and then turning the page. You kind of get the context of where he's going, but all the words and the terminology, and it's complicated.
Which one did you say would be a good starting point from him?
If you just want an introduction to Michael Heiser, I'd do Supernatural.
Okay.
If you want something a little headier, which was where we started, was Unseen Realm,
Okay.
which is a wild
That's the one that I hear referenced most often.
If you want to challenge everything you ever thought about anything, Reversing Herman.
Okay.
That is a freak show.
How?
To the point of like, why did women wear head coverings? Blow your mind. Not what you thought.
Which? I brought up Mike Winger before. Do you remember me bringing him up?
Yes.
Guy who does did the 4-hour video on divorce.
Yes.
On YouTube. Just a pastor from California.
Yeah.
Just this week published a 6.5-hour video on head coverings.
Wow.
So yeah, there's apparently a ton of.
Which is weird that that's come back up.
Yeah.
Like, who does that anymore?
I love when people dive into like.
Oh yeah.
Because like stuff like that, like the things that Christians scratch their head over, like I value the people like Heiser and Winger who are able to like pull it apart, and apparently there's just way more context to it than you could ever imagine.
And they go back to original context and original understanding, which
Yes.
is big.
Yes.
It's like, if a passage says this and you're like Second Temple Jew, it means a certain thing to you.
Mm-hmm.
But for modern day Christian to read that, we don't understand it. We don't understand the context.
Yes.
And I know my dad kind of struggles with that a little bit, because it's like, well, you just read the Bible and do your thing. It's like, well, but I think there needs to be some historical context behind some of that to understand it on a deeper level.
When people say that, there's some people who make the case that like the divine word is like eternal and applicable in any era, and I don't understand that. Like I see how that's like an attractive idea,
Right.
but
And that the Holy Spirit will discern and help you.
right. But when I look at Scripture and the way that God wants us to figure out information, and when I hear the way is narrow,
Yeah.
and like the way is wide and the gate is wide that leads to destruction, and the way is narrow that leads to salvation, or whatever the verse says, I'm like, no, I feel like God wants us to actually like know Him and learn Him and figure this stuff out.
Yeah.
Almost like it's a game. That's a weird way to put it, but
Agreed.
I feel like, I don't know, the way I like to put it is everyone is currently in their trial period. Like, you're in your trial, you need to consider everything.
Yep.
And parse everything.
Yep.
You can't coast.
Yep.
You need to think.
Agreed.
That's how I feel.
Yep.